Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to SetAmoon.com. I'm Joe Dumond, and this is the greatest assembly. We don't have to get dressed. Nobody's wearing pants, and we're all just faking with a shirt on today. This is, we get ready here 5 minutes before it's actually showtime, and it's awesome. No more 3-hour drives, 1-hour drives, getting the kids ready, getting them all in the car. I love this. I'm dreading the day that we have to go back to an assembly. But I'm also looking forward to that. Today is December 4th, and we are going to be doing the Torah portion again today. We have a little thing that I want to do beforehand to clean up some past business. And Paul, would you mind starting us off with the opening prayer, sir?
No worries, thank you. Father, I thank you for today. Give us wisdom and understanding as to the days ahead, so that we focus on you and not on that's around us. Give us a sense of awe about how you will do it, so that we are prepared to run where you run, when you tell us to run. When you show us where to hide, we hide. When you tell us to place our hand in yours, we do so, ready to be taken where you take us. And may your great name be blessed forever and ever. In the name of Jehovah. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Paul. And if you're just joining us for the first time, before we do these recordings, we have music and prayers. And today, Rebecca led us in music, and Somber did the prayers with Ronan, or Ronan did the prayers with Somber accompanying him. And I've said it before, I just want to say it again. Don't ever apologize for your kids making noises and farting and burping and stuff like that. Don't get any ideas, Ronan. But services is for kids too, and they're supposed to be part of this. So, unless you got a screaming 2-year-old, then turn off your mic. It's, that's the worst thing to be stuck in a plane for 6 hours with a baby screaming in their seat behind you. But their kids are welcome here. So don't ever apologize for that. And we do the prayers and the singing beforehand. So if you're just joining us, you've missed that out. But you're more than welcome to come and join us next Shabbat. I want to add to Paul's prayer. We have brethren some of them are here with us today, and we have others who aren't, who are sick with COVID right now. We have brethren who have died of COVID in the past few months. And my own personal family, one of my entire families is sick with COVID, as we just found out last night. And I want to remind you that we go through these prayers with Sombra. She reads this section in there about healing. And she asks Jehovah to heal us, to heal our sicknesses. And then she goes into another part where she talks about Jehovah who raises us from the dead. And I want you to think about that. I don't want to die, and I don't want any of my family to die. But that's the one thing that Satan has over us, is the fear of death. And he can get a lot of people to do a lot of different things based on that fear. But if you understand the holy days, and you understand them according to the Sabbatical Jubilee cycles, which, it seems to me that the only place that's teaching that is SetAmoon.com. If you're obeying God in just I've lost my count, 2022, 11 years time, in just 11 and a half years time, those who died in the faith will be raised up again. And the reason I'm saying that is, well, because it's true, first of all, but I'm also writing the next book, The 10 Days of Awe, and the restoration of all things. In order to know what the restoration of all things is, I'm going through it with I'm assuming my Christian reader is my reader, and I'm explaining to them what are the things that we have to restore. So you have to figure out, what did we lose? And I'm going through the ancient manuscripts about the Christians and the Nazarenes and the Ebionites and other groups that were fleeing and hating each other and fighting with each other and saying that we are not like them. And I can't help but think how much that is just like us today. You know, we got the SDA, we got the Seventh-day Baptists, we got Worldwide Church of God groups, we got Messianic groups, we got, I don't know, Hillel groups, Karaite groups, Enoch groups, Dead Sea Scroll groups, Equinox group. They all keep the Sabbath and the holy days, and they all believe that they're the only ones keeping Torah. On top of that, we got the Jews. The times that they were fleeing and trying to figure this stuff out is no different than today. They had the scriptures and they had the events going on, and they were trying to understand, same as we are. So keep each other in prayer. Those that are sick, your family, my family, our brethren, those who have left because they got all their nose out of joint and got stormed off here and never coming back, keep them in prayer too, because they're part of the process. Keep the tares in prayer, because we need the tares in order to identify who we are. Or if you're a tare, then thank you for being here, because you help to identify the rest of us. And I know we don't want to go through the persecution. And I know I like my fat stomach and the blessings that I've received, but I also know that's coming to an end. So pray for each other. You know, and look around here on the screen, look at the names, and read some of the stuff people say in the chat, get to know each other. But know that you're going to need each other here very soon. And I don't know how or why, but we're coming to that time. It used to be, 15 years away. It used to be 7 years away. Now it's just a couple years away, and I still can't believe it. But it's here and it's coming. So anyway, I'll stop eulogizing here because nobody's dead. Not yet. We're going to do the Torah portion. But before we do, we have some leftover Torah portions from, I think it's about 3 weeks ago. Now, there are some people who are not here who do watch our recordings and are very appreciative of them. And so your comments, your midrashing is very helpful to a lot of different people who don't always get to make comments in the side here. So I sent this email to Randy, and Randy, I don't want you to read the whole thing. I want you to cue it up, throw it up on the screen here, and I'll pick out the part I want. You have to make it bigger for me. This is from Pat Kloos, and Pat is a regular reader, and he likes, he likes to debate some of these things. Where are we? The general consensus in the discussion was that in Joshua 5:11, the morrow after the Passover was the 16th. So you can just scroll that up a little bit. You guys can read it. The error is based on the colloquial use of the term Passover, which is not congruent, nor supported in the Torah, nor the rest of the. So Pat's going to go on here and he's going to have a little bit of a talk with me about different things. And basically what he's pointing out, I got caught flat-footed and I went to prove something to you and I couldn't prove it. And he's calling me out on it and he's saying stuff. And so in response to him, I had to come back with a response. Scroll up a little bit more, let people be able to read this, stop the video and they can come back and read it. And scroll up a little bit more. Okay. And if we're going too fast for you guys, just stop the video and you can read it later. Conclusion, the discussion was in serious error. The use of the colloquial term was inappropriate and misleading. Inexcusable analysis was done by disseminating a single verse in isolation, ignoring the preceding definitive verse. Now, Pat sounds like he's kind of ticked off here. He's really a nice guy, and I like his comments. So as you're watching this, Pat, thank you. I do appreciate them. And if anyone else is out there who has comments who can't be part of the video session or the live session, don't be afraid to write in. I might not read them all, but so the term Passover is like the term Christmas. It's applied to a season and not specifically to a day, but it's also applied to a day. Passover is the 15th. It starts, and this is going to answer some of the things that Pat's pointing out here. It starts at the sunset at the end of the 14th, the start of the 15th, and they eat it at sunset, and they eat it in a hurry because that's the night that they're going to flee in the Exodus. And you can go read that back in the Exodus. So what I wanted to do was to, okay, I'm going to need the screen now, Brandy, was I wanted to pull up on, what am I doing? Right there. And I wanted to show you, go back to the date when this took place, because we were arguing over when the 15th and the 16th was in relation to the year that the Israelites entered the promised land. Kurt, can you see that? Okay, thank you. So this is the year 1337 BC. This is the year they entered the promised land. And this is, according to Torah calendar, the first month. Now, keep in mind, Torah calendar uses the equinox to determine when the first month of the year is. And for the most part, they're fairly accurate. And I like using them, but you have to keep that in mind. And the tombstones repeatedly show that Torah calendar doesn't always get it right. And this is another example. So on the morrow of the Sabbath was what we were arguing about. So the 14th, the morrow of the Sabbath, they ate the barley. Now, this is the first month of 1337. And the 14th is the day the Passover lamb is killed. The 15th would be the day that they ate. And on the same day they kept the Passover, they ate the barley of the land. So this is going back to Joshua 5, verses 10 and 11. So when I looked at this, I got messed up. And I said, okay, if we added another day there, that would put it on the 15th onto the Sabbath and make the 16th the first day or wave sheaf day. Okay, well, Pat in that letter pointed out that the month before, so we're going to go back out here and let's see, can I do this? Yep, I should be able to do this. Go out here. And we're going to go to the month before, which would be 1336 BC. And it's going to be the 13th month. And when I click that, I should get an error message. Come on, how come you're frozen up? Okay, I don't know what's taking that so long. We're going to skip that and go to 12 because there is no 13th month. I've already looked at this. I love technology. It makes me insane. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and go out of here and see if I can get this on the side. Well, mine's not working at all now. Randy, can I call on you? Pull up Torah calendar. I want you to go to 1336 BC. Mine's still frozen.
Mine's doing the same thing. What's going on?
Maybe Torah calendar is frozen.
Maybe Torah calendar's got an issue.
Maybe Torah calendar is not working because it's the Sabbath.
You could be right, though.
No, let me get there, Joe.
Mine still hasn't moved.
Site can't be reached. That's what
Okay, yeah, it's crashed. Okay, Torah calendar's got a problem today. Of course, when we wanted to go use it. So if you check the 12th month, there is no 13th month in 1336. But if you go to Torah calendar and you check the 12th month, it's a 30-day month, which is what Pat was pointing out. I cannot add an extra day there. It's a 30-day month, which means that the first month that I just showed you, there's something wrong with it. If we make the first month the 13th month, which would make the second month, month 1, in the year the Passover would be. Are you able to bring it up yet, Randy? No, mine's still frozen. Of course it's frozen today. Then the second month would be the first month. And if you check there, the 15th is the Sabbath. No, the 14th is the 14th would be a Friday. If you had a 30-day month, it would be the Saturday, the 15th. Anyway, what it does is it makes it work. And I'm sorry I can't show you that. The whole point was to show you this on the calendar so that it made sense. And of course, we can't do that right now. Nothing, Randy? No, I'm still frozen there too.
Nita says she has a screenshot of the calendar. Go closer.
Nita does? Okay, let's see. Bring Nita up, Randy. Let her share her screen.
Yep. Go ahead, Nita.
You have to press the little green button that says screen share at the bottom.
Yeah, so Kurt says in the chat, the reason it's froze up because all of us are trying to get on at the same time right now.
Oh, she's on her phone, so she can't do it.
Oh, okay. Anyway, there's a homework assignment. Go and look at the second month in the year 1337, and you'll see that it lines up with the wave sheaf being eaten on the morrow of the Sabbath, which is also the 15th day, but you have to add a 30-day month into the first month. Okay, just to bump it over that little bit. And the reason this is important to know is that because even back then, you can show that in order for that calendar to line up with scripture, you have to use the barley and you have to use a crescent moon to adjust it by. Okay, so that's trying to answer Pat, and we failed again to do a good job, and I apologize. But that
Can we do it verbally?
well, we
I'm
just
not-
did it verbally.
Well, I'm not quite getting his query because obviously I didn't read the whole thing as you scrolled by. But was
Okay,
he
so-
saying that the conventional wisdom at the time was that the day after tomorrow of the Sabbath was the 16th, because they used the Sabbath as the Sabbath they're referring to is the feast day itself? Or was
Well-
he talking about the time, the incident you're trying to pull up on the calendar, which happens to be Passover on Saturday, the 7th day, and then Sunday was the Wave Sheaf Day, the 16th, and they happened to be eating of the new grain that day.
So Pat's letter was complaining that we did not adequately answer the question. We left it not completely answered and kind of a bit of a mess, which we did. And that was because I got caught off guard, not having a proper answer to the question because I got the calendar dates wrong. So. he
But I
called
thought you
me-
explained that well. We just didn't have a good visual for it. I believe that's what the issue was when you were explaining it.
No, he called me out on it because I was trying to bump it the first month over by a day. And I couldn't do it because the month before was a 30-day month. So he called me out on it, which is good. He should. So after looking at it again, it's actually a 13th month had to be put in there, which was even better.
Yeah.
So that's what he's saying. So if you don't understand what's going on in Judaism right now, Shavuot is on the 6th of Sivan, the 6th of the 3rd month, because they always start their count for Shavuot on the day after the first high holy day during the days of unleavened bread. They do not count it from Wave Sheaf Day on Sunday.
So doesn't that bring up a question? Why is it a fixed day for them when it's a floating day for Passover? Maybe I'll clarify. Passover
Well,
can fall on any day.
And
It
so
has
for
to
them,
be- Oh, I
they-
see. Wait a minute. I'm
they
trying to
start,
figure.
they
Yeah.
start on the day after whatever Passover is,
Yeah.
whether it's Monday, then
So they're floating on any day of the
Except
week
days.
with Sivan 6. Yes.
yes,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And what we're trying to show you is that in order to keep Leviticus 23, the morrow after the Sabbath on a Sunday, to end up with the morrow after 7 Sabbath as a Sunday, you have to start on the Sunday. So that was the debate back then. And the calendars prove that true, but we can't pull up the calendar today. to
Do
show you.
they, I didn't do the count, but do they get 7 Sabbaths doing it that way too?
They do 7 Sabbaths and then they do a little hula hoop dance to skip it from the 7th Sabbath to whatever day of the week it is.
Okay.
So, okay, Michelle,
Okay, I have a question because I
how
just
can
went
you,
over
how can you
this.
have a question? We haven't even started our debate yet.
Well, because it's between Bibles, okay? In that blue letter Bible, it says, and the children of Israel encamped in Gilgad kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho. And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten the old corn of the land. Okay. And then when I look in my Stones Tanakh, this one says, the children of Israel encamped at Gilgal, performed the Pesach offering on the 14th day of the month in the plains of Jericho. They ate from the grain of the land on that day at the Pesach offering, matzahs, roasted grain this very day. Manna was depleting the following day. When they ate from the grain of the land, there was no longer any manna for the children of Israel. They ate from the grain of the land of Canaan that year. So why is there a discrepancy between the King James Version saying they ate old corn and the Tanakh saying they ate of the grain of the land that year? Is this just a really bad mistranslation?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it is. They make the wave offering at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. They kept Passover the night before, Saturday night. They make the wave offering the next morning. And then at 9:10, 9:15, 9:20, 10 o'clock, they can eat the grain of the land.
The new grain.
Well, the new
Okay.
grain, yeah, they can eat whatever's stored up, the old grain that's stored up, but it's the new grain. It's the new grain they can eat. They can't
Joe.
harvest it because it's still a Jubilee year, but they can pick what they need. Go ahead, Paul.
So You said Saturday night. It is not Saturday night. It's Friday night for Passover feast. Then you have the Passover. Then you have the evening of the first day of the week, and then on 9 o'clock of that day, which is the next morning, you have the wave offering.
So Paul, if you get the chart, which I was trying to pull up here today,
And then hang on, you said Saturday evening for Passover.
yes,
It can't be Saturday evening. It has to be Friday evening for the day of Sabbath.
no,
Passover.
the 14th is Sabbath. The
Yes.
lambs are killed on the 14th.
Which is
They are
Friday.
on Saturday. The lambs are
Sabbath.
killed on Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They are roasted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They are brought home and eaten at sunset Saturday night, going into Sunday,
Which
and
is the
the more-
15th.
which is the
Yes.
15th, and the morrow of the Sabbath.
Is
the
the 16th,
moral-
which you Monday.
No. The morrow of the Sabbath is still the 15th. We
Yep.
had the same exact event, I believe it was this year and
Yes.
maybe last year or the year before, where it was this year. I remember that debate
Yep, it was this year.
where the Passover was, the 14th was Saturday. Saturday night was the 15th when the Passover is eaten. And then people were getting, is wave sheaf that Sunday or the following Sunday? Well,
Yep.
it's not the following Sunday because the following seventh day is on Sabbath. And
Yeah, I understand where
they
you're
have
coming
to-
from, but I thought that you were trying to say that the actual Passover was the Friday evening with the morrow after the Sabbath, which was the way
that may
I'm
have been what
looking
I was trying to say before, because I couldn't get the calendars to line up.
Yeah.
But when you get the calendar, which it's a second month, you add an extra day make the first month a 30-day month, it works out perfectly. So
So
anyway, when
basically, Saturday was the prep day. It was the Sabbath weekly.
Okay.
And then
thought that.
Sunday was the wave sheaf day and unleavened bread, the first day of Passover.
Okay.
Correct.
I understand. Thank you.
So anyway, get that chart from Torah calendar, look at the second month, and you should be able to figure it out.
We can have Shane share it real quick if you want to do that.
If Shane can do it,
Let's try. Come on, Shane.
3 strikes and we're done.
Or it's a charm.
I think this is Anita. I think I can share it. I found it on my phone, I think.
Okay, who we got up here? Is this
Possibly.
Shane sharing now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just scroll up. No, scroll up. What year have you got? Okay, stop moving around. Just scroll up.
Joe, this is Anita. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Anita.
I just screenshot it when you first put it up.
Oh, well, you got the wrong one.
Okay, I didn't know what you had, so I had screenshot it because I was just looking at it. I
Okay,
mean,
so this
it was
is-
right. It was right before you went, before it froze.
Yeah, this is the first
Okay.
month, according to Torah calendar, which would actually be the 13th month, which makes the second month the first month, which is the one we want, which I could not pull up.
Okay.
Thank you, Anita, for trying. Okay, let's move on to the Torah portions today and see if we can get some more people confused by not figuring it out. Because we got a good Torah portion to go through today, and I just sort of glanced at it. I said, wow, this is going to be pretty good. Okay, we're going to start off with Exodus 16. And who's up? Who's reading that one?
Brother Kurt.
I'm on it. Exodus 16, verse 1. And they journeyed from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month, after they departed from the land of Egypt.
Okay, so just stop right there. What does it, yeah, hey, Kurt, what does it, why are we being told the 15th day of the second month?
Because that's the day it happened.
Yeah, Sabra, go ahead, turn on your mic.
Second Passover.
It's a second Passover day. What, is there any significance in that?
Yes, those who had been near a dead body or couldn't make the journey, which in this case they probably did,
Yeah,
would have to practice the second Passover because they were defiled for the first.
yeah, but I don't think they even had that rule at this time yet, or at least they may not have known about it because that rule comes up with Moses later on. But this would be on the 17th day of the second month when the flood took place with Noah. Right? So this is the 15th, the 17th is just 2 days later. And I'm looking at this, I'm wondering if there's a connection. Is there something related here?
Joe, Torah is eternal. It always was. So there was always the opportunity for the second Passover.
But they did not know it yet because they had not yet asked Moses, which was later on.
But Jehovah knew it.
So did Noah. So, and we know that Noah touched the dead body. That's why he kept the second Passover. So yes, you're right. But at this time, the Israelites did not yet know it. Okay, Kurt.
All right. Exodus 16, verse 2. Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said,
Hey,
to
hang
them,
on. I can't help.
it's going to be a long one, Joe.
I know. They just crossed the Red Sea. They just saw the greatest nation in the world destroyed by falling icebergs. They just walked through a valley 190 feet deep with icebergs on either side. They walked through it and they didn't get their feet wet and they didn't get stuck in mud. And then they seen the Egyptians get stuck in mud and get destroyed. They just saw it.
Yeah,
Like,
but
yeah, but like that's 1 day ago, 2 days ago.
yeah, but I had this discussion earlier today. They came from the most lucrative land in Egypt. It's like 2.5, 3 foot thick of loam, and everything grows there, giant. So they've had the lush food of the most perfect land in Egypt. They're spoiled rotten, kind of like what we are today. And so a little bit of trouble or infliction of pain and suffering, they're going to be the first ones to complain. And they
Okay.
did.
Yeah, okay. And Jeremy just made a good comment. They saw climate change up close.
Here you go. They walked from their nice lush land into this desert.
Okay, Ronnie. And then Kurt will get back to you.
Yes, that scripture actually says they came to the wilderness of Sin on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. So
Thank you.
the
Yes. 30 days later. Yes, thank you, Ronnie, point that out. And I just said that too. I didn't even register with me. Yeah. So 30 days after the Exodus, and they're already complaining. So it didn't take them long to forget. Okay, Kurt.
All right. I forgot where it was.
Verse 3.
And the children of Israel said to them, oh, that we had died by the hand of Jehovah in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill us, this whole assembly, with hunger. Then Jehovah said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven upon you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not.
Can you read that verse again?
Absolutely. Then Jehovah said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not.
So let me ask you, Kurt, I'm going to pick on you here.
Sure.
How is raining bread from heaven going to be a test for the Israelites? That would be like a blessing. Like, how is that going to be a test?
I think the test gets explained just a little bit in the future here.
Okay, let's keep reading.
And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel at evening, you shall know that Jehovah has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of Jehovah, for he hears your complaints against Jehovah. But what are we that you complain against us? Also Moses said, this shall be a sign when Jehovah gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full, for Jehovah hears your complaints which you make against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against Jehovah. Then Moses spoke to Aaron, say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before Jehovah, for he has heard your complaints. Now it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of Jehovah appeared in the cloud. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am Jehovah your God. So it was that quails came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, this is the bread which Jehovah has given you to eat. This is the thing which Jehovah has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person. According to the number of persons, let every man take for those who are in his tent. Then the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more, some less. So when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, let no one leave any of it till morning. Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses, but some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and it stank. And Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And so it was on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Then he said to them, this is what Jehovah has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to Jehovah. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains to be kept until morning. So they laid it up till morning, and Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to Jehovah. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Now it happened that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. And Jehovah said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for Jehovah has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day. So the people rested on the seventh day. And the house of Israel called its name manna. And it was like white coriander seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Then Moses said, this is the thing which Jehovah has commanded. Fill an omer with it, to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it up before Jehovah to be kept for your generations. And as Jehovah commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. That's it.
Very good. Any questions? What is the test?
See whether they'll obey or not. Simple. I told you to do this or don't do this, and it's just a simple obedience, right?
Yeah, yeah. And just to make it even more plain, Kurt, what is that actual test today? The same test.
Essentially, whether you'll keep the Sabbath or not, whether you'll sit down, stop, rest.
Do you believe I am who I say I am?
How's that a test?
Because there's every element. Do we trust that he's a generous God? Do we trust that he will protect and provide for us? Do we trust that there's an eighth day? Do we trust that the tribulation is for our own good, for our strengthening? Do we trust everything? Do we trust everything in the Torah? Have we eaten the whole basar? Do we consume the whole word of God and believe every word of it?
Bring it down to the new person. How, like, what did you just say? How is that a test? Bring it down to the new person understands here.
Because the whole thing is a journey, and you start in a relationship with him. And if you give him the opportunity, he will continually show you who he is. And if you continually trust him and obey him, he will continually bless and provide and protect you, even though it doesn't look in the world like there's any chance that you'll be protected.
Okay, you're not answering my question though. What is the test?
Whether
I
you
don't-
keep his word or not.
I don't know anything.
On a simple form, it's, okay, I'm going to tell you to do this,
Do
Yeah.
what?
and you do what it was I told you to do.
Will you follow? Will you follow me to Mount Sinai?
Yeah,
Will you keep the Sabbath?
I'm going to take you
Hang
out
on,
of
hang on.
Egypt.
Well, you guys are making it way too complicated. Glenn, say it again.
Will you keep the Sabbath?
That's the test. That is the test, plain and simple.
that's the chapter
One-
test.
Pardon me?
That's the chapter test. But then there's a bigger test, right? All of the commandments when you get to Leviticus 26, right?
Oh, yeah, but I'm just talking about the very first thing, the very first thing. Here's your very first test.
That's the first one I came to learn was the Sabbath.
Me too. Then after I learned the Sabbath, after you learned the Sabbath, all that stuff that Somber just said, then I began to learn that I'm in a relationship with God. But when I first kept the Sabbath, there's no way I'm going to keep the Sabbath. I work in 7 days a week. There's no way I can do this. Right? And Kurt, I don't know about you, but I think you're in construction, you're working 6-7 days a week.
Yep, 24/7, and it actually got painful for me
Yeah.
right here on my forehead. It was actually painful. It actually caused me to hit my head, and I said, enough. And I quit doing it, and I sat down.
James, you got your hand up. Go ahead, sir. Are you going to answer what the test is?
Well, I think it's belief, plain and simple. Do you believe in Yahweh? But
No,
the individual.
I didn't
No, no.
believe in Yahweh then. I didn't believe.
I'm sorry. Was I talking?
No, you weren't. I was interrupting you. Because when you're
My
brand,
gosh, you have
when you're
such a habit
brand,
of doing that.
when you're brand new to this walk, you don't, you're just trying to figure this stuff out. And the Sabbath, I don't want to keep the Sabbath.
Well, there's also a picture here too, that when the commandment to go out and to pick the manna, it wasn't given just to the women. It wasn't given just to the men. It was given to every person individually, which speaks volumes in itself, that we as individuals are responsible for our relationship with Jehovah. And in that relationship, whether it starts with keeping of the Sabbath or whether it starts with the reading of the word on a daily basis, it starts someplace. And the Sabbath comes into that picture in this case, because you can pick it 6 days of the week and a double portion on the 6th day, but you don't pick it on the 7th day. It was more specifically orientated towards the Sabbath, but it still starts off as, if you go back, take one step back, it still has to do with the individual responsibility to obey the voice and the commandment of Yahweh. And then the Sabbath comes into it after that.
Okay, I want everyone, I see you there, Somber, 1 second. I want every one of you, like I'm singing to a choir, I know that. But there are new people maybe here and they're not speaking up. They're afraid to speak up. There are new people watching. I want you all to go back to the very beginning when you first learned about the Sabbath. I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want to keep it.
Your first test was the Sabbath. The tests were
6
not
months.
anything else, obeying anything else. The one sign is keeping the Sabbath, and that's what pushes you the rest of the way once you start. I didn't get anywhere until I started the Sabbath.
Exactly.
I was wondering, I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What's up? Yeah, I can learn these things, those things, them things. But until I actually stepped out in faith and kept the Sabbath, I didn't get it. And then I got it after.
I was learning all kinds of historical stuff and discovering all these things, really cool stuff. But then that Sabbath thing was the test. It just upset everything in my life. Family life, work life, my career, my parents. This is such, oh man, what is everyone going to think of me? It was a terrible test. I hated it. And I tried to prove that it was wrong for 6 months. I tried really hard to prove that it was wrong. And I couldn't. So 3 weeks after I did that test, then somebody told me there's holy days. I says, what the heck are holy days? I was so stupid. Yeah, me, stupid. Somber, go ahead.
So when Stuart and I became new believers, we were, neither one of us was raised in faith. The first thing that we had to do was to abstain. We had a baby. We were about to get married. But I knew, just from the world around me, that Christians aren't supposed to have sex before they're married. And so the first test for Stuart and I was to abstain until our wedding day. Now, when you answer a test and you pass a test, then he gives you the next test. And so we kept on growing and growing and growing. And it took us 11 years before we had to face this idea of Sabbath. And yes, we've grown in leaps and bounds since Sabbath, but I would say that every walk with Jehovah has to do with learning to accept who he says he is, and not who you want him to be, who you think he should be, but allow him to define himself and allow him to draw you along the path that he's drawing you along.
Okay. I'm getting.
Totally agree, Sombra.
Sorry?
I don't want to interrupt and get yelled at again, so.
I said I totally agree, Sombra, because it was 18 years for my wife and I before we even found out about the Sabbath. But that's what sitting in a church does for you, because they don't even talk about it. So how are you going to know about it when it's, you know?
So the question is then, how did you know you were his and he was yours? Just like the scripture says.
I just
Sign of the
believed.
Sabbath.
I just believed. You know,
Ah.
I mean, I didn't come into this. I didn't come into the faith. You know, I didn't grow up in the church. I wasn't allowed to go to church when I was younger, and I never even found out about it honestly until I was 20, something like that. And then I started going to church and reading my Bible and just going through it every year and going to church on Sundays and doing the typical Christian thing, but they didn't teach me about the feast. They didn't teach me about the Sabbath. And it wasn't until I came out of it that those things were introduced to me through other means, through Yahweh. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't growing and I wasn't learning. I just learned everything I could from them. And I knew that it was time to move on because I was dying where I was. So it doesn't mean that my faith had just began after 18 years. My faith started the day that I accepted it. It's just that I didn't know all the other stuff. So I walked in obedience as best I could with what I knew. And I know that Jehovah was there because he answered some prayers like straight out that couldn't have been anything else but him. So does that mean that my faith didn't really start until, you know, I was?
No, he's leading. He leads us to his path. And some people take a long time to finally make the conviction for Sabbath. And the Sabbath is the sign, as he says, that you are his and he is yours. So it's almost like the ring. And it is the ring because it's the sevening of the covenant.
It's the start. It's the first sevening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to let his word teach you. The first thing when Stuart and I were new believers, we were told to, oh, look, there's Kay Beard. Hi. We were told to read the book of John. I get 3 verses into the book of John and it's talking about the beginning. I'm like, I can't read this. I don't know the first thing about the beginning. Flip, 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 book of Genesis. I read the book of Genesis. Yeah, I like it. Book of Exodus. Yeah, it's great. Leviticus. Oh boy, that was difficult. But I kept on reading and I kept on reading and I kept on reading. But I realized very quickly that there are things that we are taught in our church that are not in the Bible. That are not in the Bible. And I had to very quickly choose to believe God and not believe what I was being taught in my church and wait and allow God to reveal what and why. And he did. And there was a lot of things that I disagreed with my church. Things like, I was taught very quickly that speaking in tongues is done away with. Excuse me, what? Prophecy is done away with. Excuse me, what? That doesn't make any sense. And Stuart and I both decided, well, okay, we're just going to keep on walking it out until he reveals it to us. And now we get it.
Okay. Ronnie, go ahead.
I think the first thing for young believers coming out of Christian churches is they have to come past what they have been taught about God's commandments being done away with, that those laws have been done away with. They don't have to keep them anymore. So the very first thing they discover when they go back to the Old Testament is to find out that, yes, his commandments do apply to them and they do have to keep them, of which the Sabbath is one of the commandments. So it boils down to believing him, taking him at his word, and that, yes, his laws and commandments do pertain to each one of us. And there it opens up the door for keeping his Sabbath, for keeping his appointed feast days, and to walking in that closer relationship with him.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, Kay. Go ahead. Nice to see you here. Welcome. You're muted.
Well, I just finally have something to share, and that is I'm kind of intimidated because I'm new and y'all are all so smart.
No, we're not. I know these people. We are not smart at all.
Yes, you are. And I love it so much. But I inherited 4 retail stores from my parents, and we were open 7 days a week. 2 of them were in malls. They were very profitable. And I have a Jewish brother-in-law who also has children, and I've been witnessing to him for like 40 years. And when Jews for Jesus came to my church, he had a restaurant. I said, I want to buy y'all dinner. And I called my brother-in-law and said, I'm coming with 2 Jews to your restaurant. And he said, oh, are they going to try to save me? And I said, absolutely. And they didn't say one word to him the whole dinner. I was so disappointed. But as I have been witnessing and searching scriptures to see what my Jewish brother-in-law believed and how he was brought up, then God all by himself, through his word, began to peel layers and layers off to me, began to speak to me. And that was fine. I love God. I've been discipling women for 30 years now, small groups of women from every denomination. And I've been warned and rewarned not to mention the law so much, and been persecuted by all my church family. I have PhDs and Masters of Divinity children in the Baptist faith that they just can't debate me anymore because they will go against God's word. So they just give up and get mad and walk the other way. But God messed with me about the Sabbath. And that was, you can build your Sukkot, you can do your little Passovers and invite all your friends and everything, but your stores are open on Saturday. And my stores did almost $1 million in sales. And I love you, God, but I'm a Baptist when it comes to the Sabbath. It's okay. And so he began to work on me and make me so miserable and cause so many fights between me and my husband, my children, my church. And I began getting counselors from the Messianic leaders that were kind of getting famous like you. And they would say, well, they wouldn't claim you need to close your stores and then you'll have peace. Shalom. And I went to a Seventh-day Adventist pastor and he said, it's a process. And so finally I couldn't stand it anymore. So I closed my mall store. And my strip stores, I had no mall, gods over me saying you have to be open. So I closed them. And then I moved my other mall store to a smaller spot into a strip thing. And I became willing to lose money, which was my God. And my faith was in that. I knew what I needed or thought I needed. And so what God showed me was, it's okay to lose money. You're so overweight. Lord, maybe you need to starve a little bit. And I haven't lost any money. I haven't lost any profit, which is different if you're a business person. It doesn't matter how much you have in sales. What matters is your profit. But I will tell you what God gave me. It wasn't more money, so I have some dynamic testimony. What he gave me that I could not obtain was shalom. He gave me his shalom. So now all my kids, all my church friends, my husband, my mother who died last year at 98 and a half, I would read the scripture to her, which Baptists don't read the scripture. They don't read Leviticus 11. They don't read Leviticus 23. They don't read Deuteronomy. They just read Paul, and they twist it, like Peter says, into lawlessness. And so I praise God today. I praise God for this, whatever kind of group y'all are. It's so bizarre and so fascinating.
They're
I've
the
heard
bizarre group.
Joseph cuss. He said the D word, the SH word, and I just love it. I love real people
Yes, see,
that
Saba,
will-
I'm allowed to swear. Look, yes.
that will preach the truth and not a bunch of SH kind of stuff. I'm so sick of that.
Are you
and so
afraid to
thank
say
you.
that?
I
You wanna
love
say-
that little
you want the
girl
Greek word?
named what's her name? Sanja?
Sombra.
Sombra. Oh, and I made Facebook friends with you, and I love you. You are so precious. So anyway, from a newcomer who's a Sabbath keeper and a Bible teacher to church people, all church people, I will tell you, in 30 years, usually I get one convert to the law or to God, basically, in obedience. But this year I have, out of 16, I have 9 or 10 that are back with me for the 3rd or 4th year. And so they hear my Sabbath testimony, and God is fully capable of getting through to somebody like me. If that's all he had, if that's all I had was God and his word, it was enough.
Okay,
Very
Paul
good.
here.
Just hang on, Paul. That word you're looking for is in the chat there. Mike's put it there. It's not SH, it's SK. Just so you know, you can use it anytime you want. And I am so glad for your testimony. Thank you. Because I was afraid you're about to ask me, what do you do about your store being open on the Sabbath? And you're going to put me in a position to have to tell you. And I'm so glad to hear you figured it out yourself.
Isn't that what your ministry is?
What, telling people what to do? No.
Yeah,
Having
telling them the
figure-
hard things, showing them the
Ha-
truth out of God's word. That's what
Having them figure it out and knowing what to do. Taking action without me being there, because, you know, that's what it's all about. What are you going to do when nobody's around? What are you going to do when nobody's looking? Are you going to obey? And that's what Sombra keeps saying. It's the test. It's the test. Every week we get a test. You know, I was making $3,000 a week in 1980. I was 24 years old. I had more money than I did brains. And am I going to give this up for a Sabbath? My dad wanted me to go to the Yukon to work the pipelines with him. He wanted me to go to Saudi Arabia to work the pipelines there with him. We had this all lined up. I was going to be going from $3,000 a week to $6,000 a week. Hey, Dad, I'll come. I'll be your straw boss. I'll do everything you want. I'll bust my tail. I just want Saturdays off. Why? What's wrong with you? You hurt? No, I want, you know, it's the Sabbath. What, are you out of your mind? Dad never talked to me for 3-4 years after that. I never went to the Yukon. I didn't go to Saudi Arabia. Yeah, but you know what? I've had so much. I paid off my first house in 5 years. Unbelievable. But you got to obey and be blessed by those tests. You got to obey the test. And like you just said, you're going to get, it's going to eat away at you. It's going to bug you. There's something, you know, it bothered me because after my passed the first test, we were, you know, we were told we could go back to work on Saturdays. So I went back to work on Saturdays. Well, that just didn't work out well, and it cost me a fortune. Anyway, Paul, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, Joe. Kay and Joe, both of you together, actually, you've touched on a very good point. Why don't you get together and put down a testimony of how God has put you in a place of changing your work procedures and the blessings that have come out of it? In so doing, put it in a small video together, and so that people can see, because I'm going through my head trying to explain to a young lady about her business of clothing. She works 7 days a week. I need to show her that one day needs to be rest, and I need to know how you went about it for yourself, Joe went about it for himself, and if anybody else wants to put in something of a little video clip of what Jehovah did and bring them to a point of change, to a point of blessing. Is that possible?
A video testimony about converting to the Sabbath. I like it. I don't know if it's possible. I like it.
But if it is possible, all those that receive your email need to get it so they can pass it on. Because
I got to think about that, Paul. I got to figure out how to do it. I know I got some ideas kicking there now, but yeah, in fact, it's not just me, but anyone who wants to do that can do that.
They can put it together in, 5-10 minutes of a video. It's just something that I didn't have. And people said, why are you quitting? Why are you not doing Saturday anymore? And I had no real excuse for it, but I had to just stick to it. That's the hard part.
I remember a guy who I looked up to him when I was first, this is my first year learning about the Sabbath. I looked up to him, and he went to work one day on Saturday. And I didn't know about it till the next week, but I don't know what he was doing, cleaning windows or painting or something. I don't know what it was. But he had a ladder in the back of his van, and he was going to work to do a job. And he had the jam on the brakes, and the ladder came through the front window and just missed his head, smashed his window. He came next week. He said, I'd drive around for 3 days with no window in the front, but it was a lesson I had to learn because I was breaking the Sabbath. And I thought of that, wow. And then years later, and I think, Kurt, you may even know this story. There was if you ever hear the Jessup girl in Toronto here who was kidnapped and disappeared.
Not sure. Maybe it might come to me.
Yeah, something Jessup, I think. Those were Sabbath people. And the little girl got kidnapped and killed.
I learned I'm in a field that Saturday is the biggest income day. It's garden center landscaping. That's when everybody does their shopping for plants and garden work. And I was working 7 days a week for nearly 20 years, and I was worn out. And my God was, like Kay said, money. Money, always thinking that I was in control of my destiny to increase the money, to make it so I didn't have to work. It never happened. It never happened. I was a fool. And then I learned for about a year and a half about the scriptures after a major event. And I realized that there's the point of, with Jehovah, it's not an image that gets you to be known as his. A cross doesn't mean you're his. A menorah doesn't mean you're his. And no images will do that. In fact, that's one of the commandments, no images. But I realized that it's an action, and there's only one action and that's the Sabbath. And so I said, I have to convict myself to stop working on his holy day. And the minute I did that, I lost half my business immediately. And my wife said I was nuts. She said I was nuts. Many people said I was nuts. And I actually, the first week, I had people pissed off, driving by, squealing their wheels. I could hear them because we were closed. And I had 2 major messages called me, how dare I be closed on Saturday? I'm supposed to be open to the public. I had messages, hate calls. And I was teetering. And then I said, no, because it's not about them. It's not about money. It's about my conviction to his authority, and bang it. I haven't looked back since. And as Kay said, the one thing I got over time was peace. I have more peace today than ever. And that's the one thing you can't buy. You can't buy it. And so peace is where I'm at today. I love it. I won't go back. I would never go back. And people ask, you have regrets? Yeah, I have one regret, that I hadn't learned this earlier. Because now I'm nearly 60, 59, and I'm going the other way, you know? If I had known this 40 years ago, I would be glowing like Moses right now.
Yeah. That's,
So,
and my same thing, Glenn. I wish I'd learned this sooner, and I didn't. Sarkis, before I go to you, I'm going to do something a little different right now because of what we're doing here. And I see Rose. Rose, did you want a testimony? Give your testimony, or did you want to do that in the video? Is that what you're saying there?
Well, I can, but I was thinking that if somebody made a video, I would contribute to that.
Okay. Rose, can I now hit on you to read Ezekiel 20? It's not in our Torah portion, but just because of what we're doing, what we're talking about here, I think, and Glenn's, the test is what we're looking at here. Let's just read Ezekiel 20.
Let me bring it up. Ezekiel 20.
And just start, I'll just start at the beginning.
Okay. My computer's running kind of slow. I'm sorry.
Are you attached to Torah calendar?
No, I'm not. Let's use the Common English Bible. Oh, for Pete's sake. Hold on. I'm sorry. I wasn't prepared, so I have an excuse.
No, I know. I sprung this on you.
It's all right. I'm almost there, I promise. Okay, Ezekiel.
Chapter 20, verse, you can, I don't know where you want to start. Verse 1. You can actually start in verse 5 if you want. But verse 1, it just doesn't matter. Start in verse 1.
I'll start at the beginning. Okay. And it came to be in the 7th year, in the 5th month, on the 10th of the month, that certain of the elders of Israel came to inquire of Jehovah and sat before me. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel and say to them, Thus said the Master Jehovah, have you come to inquire of me? As I live, I am not being inquired of by you, declares the Master Jehovah. Judge them, Son of man, judge them. Make known to them the abominations of their fathers. And you shall say to them, Thus said the Master Jehovah, on the day when I chose Israel and lifted my hand in an oath to the seed of the house of Jacob and made myself known to them in the land of Mitzrayim, I lifted my hand in an oath to them, saying, I am Jehovah, your Elohim. On that day, I lifted my hand in an oath to them to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim into a land that I had searched out for them, flowing with milk and honey, the splendor of all lands. And I
Just-
said,
Let me interrupt you there. Again, for those of you that are new, this is something we'll talk about as we get closer to Passover. The word oath is what Glenn mentioned before. It's a sevening. It's a sevening effect. You are sevening yourself when you are counting the Omer, 7 Sabbaths. You are sevening yourself. So the Sabbath, the 7 Sabbath, the 7 annual holy days, the 7 sabbatical years, the 7 days of unleavened bread, the 7 days of Sukkot, what am I missing? Am I missing something? Okay, anyway, it's sevening yourself. That's what the word oath means, okay? Carry on, Rose.
verse 7. And I said to them, each one of you, throw away the abominations which are before his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Mitzrayim. I am Jehovah, your Elohim. But they rebelled against me and would not obey me. All of them did not throw away the abominations which were before their eyes, nor did they forsake the idols of Mitzrayim. So I resolved to pour out my wrath on them to complete my displeasure against them in the midst of the land of Mitzrayim. But I acted for my name's sake, that it should not be profaned before the eyes of the Gentiles among whom they were, before whose eyes I made myself known to them, to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim. So I took them out of the land of Mitzrayim, and I brought them into the wilderness, and I gave them my laws and showed them my right rulings, which, if a man does, he shall live by them. And I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between them and me, to know that I am Jehovah who sets them apart.
Okay, so let me interrupt you again. And this sign of the Sabbath, okay, so this is where, I'm going to do it right now again. The mark of Satan is a mark on your hand and a mark on your forehead. So Satan is duplicating Jehovah's mark. What's Jehovah's mark? The sign on your hand, whether you work on the Sabbath or not, and what you think about on the Sabbath. Are you thinking about all the money that you're not making? Or are you thinking about Jehovah and learning his word? That's the mark in your hand and the mark in your forehead. So if Satan's mark is 666, any other day but the Sabbath, Jehovah's mark is the Sabbath. This is a really important thing to come to understand, so you don't get all messed up with all these people, the mark of the beast, the mark of the beast. Who cares about the mark of the beast? Learn what the mark of Jehovah is.
And this is important because right here in Ezekiel 20:12, it says plural Sabbaths, not Sabbath.
Plural. Yep. Okay, Rose.
Verse 13. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my laws, and they rejected my right rulings, which, if a man does, he shall live by them. And they greatly profaned my Sabbaths. Then I said I would pour out my wrath on them in the wilderness to consume them. But I acted for my name's sake, not to profane it before the Gentiles, before whose eyes I had brought them out. And I myself also lifted my hand in an oath to them in the wilderness, not to bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, the splendor of all lands. Because they rejected my right rulings and did not walk in my laws, and they profaned my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols, and my eye pardoned them from destroying them, and I did not make an end of them in the wilderness.
Okay, I got to interrupt you again. What she just read is what is read in Hebrews 4. I will not bring them into my rest, my Sabbath rest. Again, that goes back to Genesis 1, I think, but Hebrews 4 is what they're talking about. Or is Hebrews 4 is talking about this verse here in Ezekiel. Okay.
And they just an interjection there. Notice that this was an oath they had taken at Mount Sinai, and they broke it. He had every right to destroy them instantly, and he held back, just like he's holding back today. He's held back his entire 6,000 years. He still hasn't taken out his final wrath on those that don't listen. So that's restraint to a godly level, because we wouldn't have that kind of restraint to anybody who doesn't obey us if they had taken an oath with us.
Yep. Okay, Rose, verse 17.
Verse 17. And my eye pardoned them from destroying them, and I did not make an end of them in the wilderness. And I said to their children in the wilderness, do not walk in the laws of your fathers, nor observe their rulings, nor defile yourself with their idols. I am Jehovah your Elohim. Walk in my laws and guard my right rulings and do them. And set apart my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, to know that I am Jehovah your Elohim. But the children rebelled against me. They did not walk in my laws and my right rulings. They did not guard to do them, which, if a man does, he shall live by them. They profaned my Sabbaths, so I resolved to pour out my wrath on them, to complete my displeasure against them in the wilderness. But I held back my hand and acted for my name's sake, not to profane it before the eyes of the Gentiles, before whose eyes I had brought them out. Also, I myself lifted my hand in an oath to those in the wilderness, to scatter them among the Gentiles and disperse them throughout the lands, because they had not done my right rulings, and they rejected my laws, and they profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were on their fathers' idols. And I also gave them up to the laws that were not good, and right rulings by which they would not live. And I defiled them by their own gifts, as they passed all their firstborn through the fire, so that I might stun them, so that they might know that I am Jehovah. Therefore, Son of Man, speak to the house of Israel, and you shall say to them, thus said the Master Jehovah, in this your fathers have further reviled me by committing trespass against me. When I brought them into the land for which I had lifted my hand in an oath to give them, and they saw all the high hills and all the thick trees, they offered their slaughterings there and provoked me with their offerings there. And they sent up their sweet fragrance there and poured out their drink offerings there. And I said to them, what is this high place to which you go? So its name is called High Place to this day. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus said the Master Jehovah, are you defining yourselves in the way of your fathers? And do you whore after their abominations? For when you lift up your gifts and make your sons pass through the fire, you defile yourselves with all your idols, even to this day. And shall I be inquired of by you, O house of Israel? As I live, declares the Master Jehovah, I am not being inquired of by you. And what comes up in your spirit shall never be when you say, let us be like the Gentiles, like the tribes in other lands, serving wood and stone. As I live, declares the Master Jehovah, do not I with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out, reign over you. And I shall bring you out from the peoples, and gather you out of the lands where you are scattered, with a mighty hand, and then with an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out. And I shall bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and shall enter into judgment with you face to face there. As I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Mitzrayim, so I shall enter into judgment with you, declares the Master Jehovah. And I shall make you pass under the rod, and shall bring you into the bond of the covenant, and purge the rebels from among you, and those who transgress against me. From the land where they sojourn, I bring them out, but they shall not come into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am Jehovah. As for you, O house of Israel, thus said the Master Jehovah, go, serve each of you his idols, and afterwards, if you are not listening to me, but do not profane my set-apart name any more with your gifts and your idols. For on my set-apart mountain, on the mountain height of Israel, declares the Master Jehovah, there all the house of Israel, all of them in the land shall serve me. There I shall accept them, and there I shall require your offerings and the first fruits of your offerings, together with all your set-apart gifts. As a sweet fragrance, I shall accept you when I bring you out from the peoples, and I shall gather you out of the lands where you have been scattered, and I shall be set apart in you before the Gentiles. And you shall know that I am Jehovah, when I bring you into the land of Israel, into the land for which I lifted my hand and oath to give to your fathers. And there you shall remember your ways and all your deeds with which you were defiled, and you shall loathe yourselves in your own sight because of all the evils that you did. And you shall know that I am Jehovah when I have dealt with you for my name's sake, not according to your evil ways, nor according to your corrupt deeds, O house of Israel, declares the Master Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward the south, and drop word against the south, and prophesy against the forest land, the south. And you shall say to the forest of the south, Hear the word of Jehovah. Thus said the Master Jehovah, See, I am kindling a fire in you, and it shall devour every green tree and every dry tree in you. The blazing flame is not quenched, and it shall burn all faces from the south to the north. And all flesh shall see that I, Jehovah, have kindled it. It is not quenched. And I said, Ah, Master Jehovah, they are saying of me, is he not speaking in parables?
And is he not sending these forest fires? Do you not see
is,
that
and-
him saying that right now, right here?
Right.
These forest fires, I will, but nobody sees it of them. Anyway, thank you, Rose.
You're welcome.
I wanted to, because we're talking about the Sabbath, I wanted to bring that out, that it is his sign between him and I, and how many, him and us, and how many times we have cast it aside like nothing, and how ticked off he gets at us. Sarkis, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, the one thing that brought up is the Sabbath is you could do it mechanically and keep it, but it's all about walking. Because if you look in that verse itself,
What verse?
in Exodus 16, yeah, and it says,
What verse?
it's the same verse,
Well, there's a whole
4.
bunch of verses in 16.
Verse 4, then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, and I will prove that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. The word walk, it has to do with a relationship. And we see that in Genesis, Enoch walked with God, Noah walked with God. And it's a relationship that requires faith. And so you could have the appearance keeping the law, but if you don't have that relationship, then that's not what he's asking for. He is asking for a relationship to walk. That means you have to understand not that only he provides salvation, like he saved them by crossing the Red Sea saved them from Egypt, but he's saying, look, I want you as my bride. I want to have relationship, that you are in love with me, and that you do things because you love me, not because I require of you. And so that is a challenge we have, and the church does not teach that. What they teach is, okay, we got salvation, and we got free ticket. We don't have to demonstrate our love, because Yeshua says, if you love me, you keep my commandments. And he says his commandments are not burdensome. They're light. And that's in Matthew 11, verse 28. Let me read it quickly. 11:28. And it says, come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's all about personal relationship. If you're in love with somebody, you want to walk with them. You don't just tell them what to do. You walk with them. You don't do just what they tell you. You do it because you love them. You are involved. You are intimately involved. You want to know the other person. You want to know what makes them tick. You want to know what makes them happy. You want to make them what makes them open up to you and build that. relationship. And
So-
that's why marriage is very important here to understand. It's a relationship.
which is, what Sombra was saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong, not at all, not you and Sombra, no, you're dead right. But for the brand new person,
Yep.
the first thing you gotta do is you gotta go hide underneath your bed and not move all day long from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, so you can keep your first Sabbath holy. And you don't do anything because you don't want to break it. You don't know what you're supposed to do. And then the second Sabbath, you maybe get out from under the covers and maybe walk around if it's not too much exercise, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my testimony, what happened to me.
But just hang on. Those first steps of keeping the Sabbath holy, that is the baby steps. It's after you start to keep the Sabbath regularly and you get tested to break it. That's when you start to develop the relationship that you and Sombra are talking about, that relationship between you and Jehovah. And that's the whole purpose, to develop that relationship.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, give your testimony. And just so everyone else knows, we're already at 3:00 and we still got to get into Isaiah. Isaiah is going to be awesome.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll keep it short. Basically, when I came to know the Lord, the next few weeks, I started reading the Bible. I started doing from Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation. And throughout the weeks and months after that, I kept going to my pastors and Bible study leaders, and they kept telling me, oh, the law is done away with, the laws, and it's not for us, it's for the Jews, and we don't need to keep it. And so here's the thing. As a new believer, we expect our church leaders to teach us correctly, and they have not, and they still are not. They want salvation without commitment. And as a result, we're in a mess today, and I am byproduct of that. It took me a long time. I almost lost my wife and my children over it until, I got knocked in my head and saying, just go back and read the scriptures. And so keeping Sabbath is part of the process, yes. But if you have a lot of peer pressure with people who don't know the truth, it's very difficult for new believers. I tell new believers, the minute you've come to know the Lord, stay away asking questions. Study the scripture and ask the Lord himself. Because Yeshua said, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door shall be open to you, seek and you'll find. And I find out a lot of people who study on their own, they come to the same conclusion.
I find I asked Jehovah questions back then, and I remember doing that. And I remember being told, or not told, shown the answer, like that day or the next day, or the Bible or a radio religious program would come on and give me the answers, what I asked in the prayer, and I couldn't believe it.
Yep,
and
the answers.
That was weird. Like, he's really real?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Sarkis. Glenn, I'm going to let you be the last one. Then we're going to go into Isaiah chapters 9 through 11.
Okay, that's me, so I'll be on for a while. So anyways, so Sombra and Sarkis had mentioned the relationship. It is a relationship, and that's where you start the process of reading and learning your spouse, the groom. And guess what? The Sabbath is likened to the engagement ring. Once you put it on, you don't take it off because you're going to a bar for a party and you don't want anybody to know you're married or engaged. That's not what you do, because if you set aside the Sabbath, that's what you're doing. You're taking the ring off. And so it's the sevening, it's a circle. It all makes sense when you put it in that kind of likening. It is the engagement ring for the next step. And we won't be married until we get to the end of the seventh millennium. But in the meantime, this is your oath engagement ring to Jehovah. That's how I like it. So I will start reading.
And just so y'all know, I have my Bible is the most of my markups in my Bible are between verses 8 through 12 or 13. And this is going to be hard to get through all this. We might not even see Psalms.
So was it Isaiah 9? Was that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Excuse me. Yes, there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish, as in the former time. He degraded the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. So afterwards he will glorify the way of the sea beyond Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. They who dwell in the land of the shadow of death, on them the light has shined. You have multiplied the nation. You have not increased the joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy in harvest, and as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For you have broken the yoke of his burden and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his taskmaster, as in the day of Midian. For every boot of the warrior is with commotion, and a coat rolled in blood shall be burning fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. There is no end of the increase of his government, and peace on the throne of David and on his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and with justice from now on, even forever. The zeal of Jehovah of hosts will do this. The Lord sent a word to Jacob, and it has fallen on Israel. And all the people shall know, Ephraim and the people of Samaria, who say in pride and hardness of heart, the bricks have fallen down, but we will build with cut stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we use cedars instead. And Jehovah shall set up the foes of Rezin against him and spur on his enemies, the Syrians in front and the Philistines behind, and they shall devour Israel with open mouth. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. For the people do not turn to him who strikes them, nor do they seek Jehovah of hosts. And Jehovah will cut off from Israel head and tail, branch and rush in one day. The elder and the honorable, he is the head, and the prophet who teaches lies, he is the tail. For the leaders of this people led them astray, and their guided ones are swallowed up. For this the Lord shall not rejoice over their young men, nor shall he have, have mercy on their orphans and widows. For everyone is a hypocrite and an evildoer, and every mouth speaks foolishness. In all this, his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. For wickedness burns like the fire. It shall devour the briars and the thorns, and it shall kindle in the thickets of the forest, and they shall roll upwards like the lifting up of smoke. Through the wrath of Jehovah of hosts is the land scorched, and the people shall be as the fuel of the fire. No man shall have pity on his brother. And he shall cut off on the right hand and be hungry, and he shall eat on the left, and they shall not be satisfied. Each man shall eat the flesh of his own arm. Manasseh, Ephraim, and Ephraim, Manasseh, and they together shall be against Judah. In all this, his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to just stop talking to get through that chapter. If any of you have ever heard Jonathan Cahn, this is the verse he uses to describe what happened on 9/11.
Yeah.
And it's starting at the verse 10, the bricks have fallen down, but we have rebuilt them, or rebuilt with hewn stones. This is what
Nimrod.
No, not Nimrod. This is what Who said it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. the Senate-
Obama said it, did he not?
Wasn't it Bush?
Was it Bush? I don't
No,
remember
it
Bush.
was one of the senators. Yeah, his name eludes me too. I think it begins with an I. Yeah,
Anyway.
he's one of the senators who's been actually he's been exposed and he's been shunned now.
Well, they said this after 9/11. We're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild. And then Jonathan Cahn comes out with this. And you just got to read that. This,
Yeah.
if this is talking about 9/11, let's just say it is. And spur his enemies, the Syrians before and the Philistine behind.
Mhm.
Where's the United States been fighting?
Right.
Right? Where? Who? Right? And shall devour Israel with an open mouth. For all his angers, whose anger? Jehovah's anger. He's still pissed off at us. But his hand is stretched out still. For the people do not turn to him who strikes them. Look at Abbotsford, British Columbia. They've been flooded again. Another atmospheric river is coming into Abbotsford. And then there's another one coming later this week. Right? There's no mercy being, and then they got cold weather. The water's freezing up. It's hard to work with frozen water. It's just miserable working in the rain, trying to salvage stuff that's already destroyed. For his people do not turn back to him who strikes them, nor do they seek the Lord of hosts. Nobody's looking for you. We should have 5,000 people here every Sabbath. And Randy should have 5,000 at his service. And Kurt, 4,980 at his. Right? You guys should all be teaching. There should be such a demand for you all to teach. You don't need
That'll
to be
come.
You don't need to be sitting here with me. Therefore, the Lord will cut off the head and the tail of Israel. That's the president and the prophet. The prophet that's a liar is called the tail. Okay. And those who are led by them are destroyed. Therefore, the Lord will have no joy in the young men, nor have mercy on their fatherless or the widows. The fatherless and the widows. That's Jehovah's red hotline. They can call Jehovah at any minute and he answers them. But now he's even turning his back on them. For everyone is a hypocrite and an evildoer, and every mouth speaks folly. For all his anger is not turned away. This is speaking to Israel. And Manasseh shall devour Ephraim, and Ephraim Manasseh, and together they shall be against Judah. What is going on here?
Chaos.
This is the strategic alliance of the most powerful nations going to pot. Okay, anyone got any other comments they want to say about this before we move on to chapter 10?
I just wanted to say I read the book. I watched the video of the Harbinger.
Yep.
If anyone's interested in seeing God at work in fulfilling the prophecies, go there and watch or read that. You will be blown away. 1 or 2 or 3 things you could say is a coincidence. When you get to 9, it's not a coincidence. This chapter was fulfilled exactly in that 9/11 Harbinger book that Jonathan Cahn writes about. Amazing book. Check it out.
Okay, who has got chapter 10?
I do, Patty H.
Go ahead, Patty H.
Woe to those making unrighteous inscriptions and writers who have prescribed toil, to keep the needy back from right ruling, and to take what is right from the poor of my people, that widows become their prey and orphans their plunder. What shall you do in the day of visitation and in the ruin which comes from afar? To whom would you run for help? And where would you leave your wealth? Without me, they shall bow down among the prisoners and fall among the killed. With all this, his displeasure has not turned back, and his hand is still stretched out. Woe to Asher, the rod of my displeasure, and the staff in whose hand is my displeasure. Against a defiled nation I send him, and against the people of my wrath I command him to seize the spoil, to take the prey, and to tread them down like the mud of the streets. But he does not intend so, nor does his heart think so, for it is in his heart to destroy and cut off not a few nations. For he says, are not my princes sovereigns? Is not Calno like Carchemish? Is not Hamath like Arpad? Is not Shomeron, I think that's Samaria, like Damascus? As my hand has found the reins of the idols, whose carved images excelled those of Jerusalem and Samaria, as I have done to Samaria and her idols, do I not do also to Jerusalem and her idols? And it shall be, when Jehovah has performed all his work on Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, that I shall punish the fruit of the greatness of the heart of the sovereign of Asher, and the boasting of his haughty looks. For he has said, by the power of my hand I have done it, and by my wisdom, for I have been clever. And I removed the boundaries of the people and have robbed their treasuries. And I put down the inhabitants like a strong one. And my hand finds the riches of the people like a nest. And I have gathered all the earth like forsaken eggs are gathered. And there was no one who moved a wing, nor opened a mouth with even a peep. Would the axe boast itself over him who chops with it? Or the saw exalt itself over him who saws with it? As a rod waving those who lift it up, as a staff lifting up that which is not wood? Therefore the Master, Jehovah of hosts, sends leanness among his fat ones, and under his esteem he kindles a burning like the burning of a fire. And the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his set apart one for a flame. And it shall burn and devour his weeds and his thorn bushes in one day, and consume the esteem of his forest and of his fertile field, both life and flesh. And they shall be as when a sick man wastes away, and the remaining trees of his forest shall be so few in number that a child records them. And in that day it shall be that the remnant of Israel, those who have escaped of the house of Jacob, never again lean upon him who struck them, but shall lean upon Jehovah, the set apart one of Israel in truth. A remnant shall return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty El. For though your people, O Israel, be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return, a decisive end, overflowing with righteousness. For the Master Jehovah of hosts is making a complete end, as decided, in the midst of all the earth. Therefore, thus said the Master Jehovah of hosts, my people who dwell in Zion, be not afraid of Ashur, who struck you with a rod and lifts up his staff against you in the way of Mitzrayim. For yet a little while, and the displeasure shall be completed, and my displeasure be to their destruction. And Jehovah of hosts stirs up a lash for him as the smiting of Midian at the rock of Oreb. And as his rod was on the sea, so shall he lift it up in the way of Mitzrayim. And in that day it shall be that his burden is removed from your shoulder, and his yoke from your neck, and the yoke shall be destroyed because of the anointing oil. He has come upon Ayath, he has passed Migron. At Michmash he stored his supplies. They have gone through the pass. They have taken up lodging at Giva. Ramah is afraid. Giva of Shul has fled. Lift up your voice, O daughter of Galim. Listen, Lahisha, O poor Anatoth. Madmena has fled. The inhabitants of Gibeon sought refuge. Yet he remains at Nob that day. He shakes his fist at the mountain of the daughter of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem. Look, the master, Jehovah of hosts, is lopping off a branch with an awesome crash, and the tall ones are cut down, and the lofty ones are laid low. And he shall cut down the thickets of the forest with iron, and Lebanon shall fall as a mighty one.
Thank you. Patty?
Yeah, sorry for the names in there.
No, don't be sorry. That's good. It's better than me stuttering along here, stumbling along. So thank you. This is huge. Anybody want to talk, or do I go off?
Yeah, this is Assyria. This is the prophecy.
Who is Assyria, Glenn?
Germany.
Prove it.
Prove it. We'll have to go back to the study that you have in video. Who is Assyria? How about you do that? I'm not as well versed about the details as you are.
The Assyrian, first of all, you got to understand who Assyria is here. That's the most important thing. This chapter, once you know who Assyria is, and if you know who Ephraim or Israel are, then this chapter starts to make a whole lot of scary sense. Assyria were the destroyed by the Babylonians. They moved into what is known as the country of the Hittites. They had cities up in the Bosporus area, which is, there goes my brain, the Turkey. What's those big city right there in the Turkey, the Bosporus Sea? Come on, somebody.
Constantinople?
Constantinople, thank you. Just below Constantinople, there's another little lake. I'm glad you did that map course. There's another little lake, and around that lake are these towns. One of them was called Carmania. One of them was called Alamein. Anyone speak French? What do you call the Germans in French?
Les Allemands.
Les Allemands. What is this town? Alamein. That's the English version of Allemand on the Bosporus
Kermani
Sea.
people.
And when they were taken into captivity by the Babylonians at the defeat of them in Carchemish, they were brought down and transported the same as the Israelites were transported away from their natural area. And they came down and they settled in what is now Iran, and they settled in a place called today Kerman, Kerman. And when the Persians began to come in and attack the Babylonians with the Medes, they also chased out the Parthians and the remnant of the Kermans, and they all migrated north together, this mixed group, and they settled up in what became known as the Anglos and the Saxons, and the Kermans settled in what is called Kermany, and the Alamans settled up in that area as well. And the, I forgot their names, the Black Forest. Who are the really, really strong?
Barbarians?
Bavaria, thank you.
Black Huns.
The Huns, the Bavarians, who have traced their name, they actually trace themselves right to the Bosporus Sea. They also settled up there. And if you take the symbol for Germany, which is a two-headed eagle, it's the very same symbol that is on all the hieroglyphs of the Hittites. So that's who the Assyrians are, and that's who they've become. And they were the ones who destroyed Israel, and they are the ones prophesied to again destroy Israel. But
we had a guest for dinner last Sunday night who was an Iranian, and I was telling him all of this, and I was telling him about Kerman, or Jehu the son of Omri, Kumri, and Kerman. And he says, oh yes, he says that area Kerman is known for the Jews. Of course, that was before the revolution, But there was a lot of Jewish population in that area of Kerman in Iran.
Mhm. Who took the Jews there? The Babylonians. And who did they also settle there? The Kermans and the Jews. Okay. So yeah. Now the Assyrians, or those people from Syria, they now believe, because I worked with a bunch of people from Iraq, they believe that they are now the Syrians. They are the remnants or the leftovers of the Assyria, but they are not the power, the strength that Assyria once used to be. That's Germany. And Germany is the iron fist. And what's the scripture I'm thinking of where the iron is mixed with clay? And that clay is called Arab. And that's Germany. And the Arabs, or what you've seen in 2014, was a mass migration of 3 million Muslim people into Germany.
Is that the foot, the
That's
statue?
Foot of the statue, exactly.
Daniel 2, is it I'm thinking of? Well, anyway, they don't mix. That's the iron fist and the clay. They don't mix. What else we got here?
See, you did a good job, Joe.
Yeah, that's one of my good. I love that teaching. Okay, so verse 5. Verse 5. Woe to Assyria, the rod of my anger, the staff in whose hand is my indignation. I missed one here. There's one. Let's do that one first. What does that mean? When I say
Read it. Woe to Assyria.
woe to Assyria. Okay, so that's warning Assyria.
Yeah.
And then it says the rod of my anger.
Yeah. So he's going to use Assyria against Israel in its entirety to chastise us. But when he's done chastising us, he's going to have his wrath out on Assyria for hurting us.
Yep. But when it says the rod of my anger, what does that mean, Glenn? Like what's he saying there?
That's his whip, his
No.
chastising power.
Okay. but
That's
what's
the spanker.
Yeah, that's the Thor's SWAT sticker.
No, you're missing the point here. I'm looking at the word rod. What does a rod represent?
Oh,
It's the authority,
tithe. Yeah.
The authority, okay.
the
And what
staff, the shepherd's hook, the instruction.
and what do you do with the shepherd's hook, Somber? Keep going. You're on the right path.
You chastise. I'm sorry, but you do. Shepherd
you don't.
down. Yes,
No, you
you do. Musar. Okay.
You put him
Okay.
under the rod.
What does that mean, Glenn?
That means you're choosing 1 out of 10 to do with what you will. 9 will perish, 1 will be chosen.
Somebody else said, I didn't see who that was, every 10th one. Maybe that was Vivian. The every 10th one is holy.
Yes.
The other 9 are fodder.
Okay, but when we talk about how the rod being the shepherd's hook, the instruction, and we don't beat the sheep with the shepherd's hook, what you do is you take away from parents a tool by which to teach their children right from wrong. And I'm not talking about beating your kids to death. But when we, in our common culture, say that there's no spanking in the Bible, I'm sorry, but what did Assyria do to Israel? They didn't just negotiate with them and talk to them gently and say, I'm trying to teach you something correctly. Here's my shepherd's hook. I'm going to gently guide you away. Nah. They got beat. They got beat. They had to be taught a lesson, and they had to be taught a lesson the hard way. And sometimes you have to take your toddler and you got to smack their hand. And sometimes you got to take their little bums and you got to spank their bums.
You're going to get me kicked off of YouTube.
I'm going to get you kicked off of YouTube. But I'm sorry, but we live in a world today that has ceased to spank their children. And look at the mess we're in. Because, we just want to gently use that rod of instruction to direct our children. And it doesn't work.
And against my people, against the people of my wrath. Who's that?
Well, you don't get angry at those that aren't your children.
Yeah. So you get angry. So these are talking about Jehovah's people.
Yeah.
right? So every 10th one is going to be spared, and the other 90 are going to be destroyed, or the other 9. That's what it
that's
means
of-
when
of-
going underneath the rod here. That's when you pass underneath the rod, every 10th one is holy. It's a random chance.
So
Sorry.
his people are going to be gleaned to 10%. Then when that is done, then he goes after Assyria.
Yeah.
For his wrath.
Now, the other thing here, I believe this is a study I did, so long ago, I'm not even sure if I did it. I think, and Sombra, this might be something for you to do. The order of the cities here, Kalnu, like Carchemish and Hamath and Arpad and Samaria and Damascus. I think in my brain it's telling me this is the, or I don't know where those places are in the top of my head, that this is the order that the kings of the east are going to destroy Assyria coming from the east. I think, but Carchemish is way out there in Africa.
Yeah, I was going to say none of these places are in the promised land.
Hamath is in Syria. Arpad, where's Arpad? Kalno. Samaria, I know where that is. Damascus, I know where that is. Maybe I'm mixing up a study here, because all these places I was thinking of were north of Jordan.
You mean like Turkey area?
No, not Turkey, north of Jordan. They're in Iraq. Okay, I think I'm confusing it here. There's another scripture here that I wanted to read where he's talking about the axe. Where does it say the axe?
15.
15. Shall the axe boast itself against him who chops with it? This is the most amazing little tidbit here. When you look at the word axe, let's just pull it up on the screen. See if I can do this here. Okay, I'm going to share screen, talk to myself, chew gum, do things, can't do, share screen. So Isaiah, we are in 10:15. Shall the axe boast of itself against him? And the word axe here, Isaiah 5, what's Isaiah 5?
I've got Garzan. You did 5, not 15.
Yeah, no,
You want 15.
I want 15. The axe. Garzan, axe. Garzan. No, dead end. Okay. Cut axe, cut axe. Okay. I'm probably in that same study on Assyria. Again, I haven't looked at that for a long time. The axe here is telling you where it's coming from.
Do you mean the word hewn instead of the word axe? Katsav? That word chatsav means to cut, to carve, by implication, hewn, split, square, quarry, engrave, cut, dig, divide, engrave, make, mason. Because what you're getting at is, can creation tell the creator what to do?
Well, no, that's not where I was going. The axe here is a battle axe. And it's a symbol for
smashing and crashing.
For smashing and crashing. It's a symbol for the flute. How do you say the word, Glenn? Flute? Filiot? The swastika?
Swastika, yeah.
What's that called? Fliut?
Not French, sorry.
No, that's the Fliot is a German name. Fliot.
Oh. Sounded French.
Anyway, it's a swastika. And this swastika is the hammer going around in a circle.
Like a flail?
The flail, yeah, but that's not it. It's Thor's hammer.
Thor's hammer. It's
Yeah.
it's also a rotating sun cross.
Yes,
Also ties directly to sun worship.
but the hammer is also a battle axe, which is also the symbol for Thor, which is the god of Asher, which brings you right back to Cush and to Nimrod. And it's a message that Jehovah is sending right back to the garden, not the Garden of Eden, to just after Noah's flood. It's an amazing prophecy here. It's a play on words that's taking place here. And I'm not able to bring it up for you now, but go and look at the Assyria teaching. Go and look at my teaching on Thor. Again, I did that a number of years ago.
It
So
also shows connection back to Egypt.
how so?
Well, that's what my book says right here. I got this book tracing our ancestors,
Okay.
and it's showing symbolism through symbolism, connections of people through symbolism. And it's got a whole page, a whole portion, and it says Trojan, Egyptian, and Phoenician. And that's where the swastika shows up.
It also shows up in the Middle East.
And
But
it's
the-
Hittite or Katai as well.
Vikings.
So it's
Yeah.
it's connected to those cultures.
What'd you say, the Katai?
Katai
Yeah, that's one of the tribes of Asher
and the Hittites.
and the Hittites. And the Katites are both black and white. And they are two different tribes by the same name. They're very fierce warriors.
Those were the Huns, the dark Huns and the white Huns.
Mm,
Is that who they were?
well, the Huns came about 1,000 years later. So
Just a quick question. Weren't the Hittites one of the groups that were supposed to be wiped out? Like a full end made of? I don't know the scripture back in Exodus, I suppose, or maybe it's in Numbers. There was a group of people that were supposed to be wiped out completely. Were they part of that?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Kurt. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
Plead ignorance on that one.
That's two of us.
I have another, therefore the Son of God, verse 24. O my people who dwell in Zion, do not be afraid of the Assyrian. He shall strike you with a rod and lift up his staff against you in the manner of Egypt for a very little while, and the indignation will cease, as will my anger in their destruction. As I read that, I'm looking at the time that we have left. And I'm saying, how is all this stuff going to take place? All these things that have to happen. You know, there's going to be so much going on at once. It's going to be stunning. It's going to be, you know, your mouth's going to be so big, so open.
Well, isn't there a New Testament scripture that says men's hearts will fail them?
Yeah.
For fear. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened yet.
And we've just got a new chancellor in Germany, and I don't even know who they are yet. But I know that Angela Merkel has taken her final bow and left the scene. Okay, anything else anyone want to talk about here before we move on to chapter 11? Who is reading chapter 11?
C'est moi.
C'est moi.
C'est moi. But a shoot shall grow out of the stump of Jesse. A twig shall sprout from his stalk. The spirit of Jehovah shall alight upon him, a spirit of wisdom and insight.
Okay, I got to stop you here. Go back and read verse 1 again. Why did you say twig?
Did I say twig?
Yeah.
But a shoot shall grow out of the stump of Jesse, a twig shall sprout from his stalk.
Okay,
I-
I've got, what version are you reading?
JPS, Jewish Publication Society.
Ah, okay, that's why. Yeah.
What's
They're
wrong
trying-
with the word twig?
They're trying to hide something.
Oh, really? What are they
It
hiding?
should be, yeah, it should be netzer or a branch,
Yeah.
Okay, and what's wrong with twig?
because the Nazarene is what Yeshua called his disciples, the branch. His parable of the branch is very specific.
The
About-
Nazarenes are not named after Nazareth. 'Cause
It's
Nazareth was barely, it's like 4 houses at the time.
it netzer in the sense of greenness,
There
as
you
a
go.
striking color, a shoot, figuratively a descendant or a branch. But I like the word greenness. What the heck do we know? We're so green.
No, it's not got nothing to do with you being green. It's the branch. The branch is talking about is our Messiah,
From the
netzer,
root.
the netzer. It's a very important word, and you just called it a twig like it was nothing.
It's
just
the
a-
version. What was the version you
Just a
read from?
twig, just a twig,
Jewish Publication Society.
just a little twig. Don't just ignore it. That's got no meaning at all.
No, but it got you to sit up and listen, didn't it?
Well, because you weren't saying, I said, what's she saying? Twig, what's going
No.
on here?
It's because it was different and you paid attention to it.
No, it's because I was about. to
Otherwise,
jump
you
all-
would have
I
just
was-
gone straight over this and
I
we
was
never
about
would have
to
talking
jump
about
all
branch
over-
at all.
I was going to talk all about branch here, and I said, what's she saying the twig for? I said, you got me paused. You almost got in verse 2. Okay, go on. Read verse 2 now.
Okay, the spirit of Jehovah shall alight upon him, a spirit of wisdom and insight, a spirit of counsel and valor, a spirit of devotion and reverence for Jehovah. He shall sense the truth by his reverence for Jehovah. He shall not judge by what his eyes behold, nor decide by what his ears perceive. Thus he shall judge the poor with equity, and decide with justice for the lowly of the land. He shall strike down a land with the rod of his mouth. Oh, there's that rod again. And it says strike down. It doesn't say gently caress and instruct. And slay the wicked with the breath of his lips. Thus shall be girdled of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his waist. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf, the beast of prey, and the fatling together, with a little boy to herd them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion, like the ox, shall eat straw. A babe shall play over a viper's hole, and an infant pass his hand over an adder's den. In all of my sacred mount, nothing evil or vile shall be done, for the land shall be filled with devotion to Jehovah, as water covers the sea. In that day, the stock of Jesse that has remained standing shall become a standard for the people. Nations shall seek his counsel, and his abode shall be honored. In that day, my Jehovah will apply his hand against the redeemed of the other part of his people from Assyria. As
Okay, hang
also,
on. Sorry, Sombra,
yep,
read that again, because you like, I'm okay with everything else you're reading, but this one here, you just, read verse 11.
in that day, my Jehovah will apply his hand against the redeeming of the other part of his people from Assyria. As
Okay.
also from,
Okay, so on my version, it says, it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord, Jehovah, shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left.
Wow, big difference.
Yeah, you don't get that at all with what Sombra read. Our
No,
version.
this is the second
Exodus.
Exodus.
redeeming
recover.
the other part of his people. That
Okay.
would be like the lost. So he came first for the lost sheep of Israel. That's
Yes.
us, right? We're the
Yes.
lost sheep of Israel.
Yes.
Well, actually, the Exodus is what we're talking about here.
No,
And
the
he came-
Exodus is the Jews. That already happened.
The Exodus is not the Jews. What are you talking about?
Israel. It's both Israel.
Yeah,
What
I
happened?
understand.
Did somebody just hit you in the head? What's going on here? The Exodus is all 12 tribes of Israel.
I understand that. But what we see it as, because we fail to recognize ourselves as the 10 northern tribes, right?
No,
Yes.
don't misinterpret
Well,
what the world's saying.
Yeah.
It's the 12 tribes of Israel taken out of the Exodus.
Okay.
Jehovah came and got them. He rescued them at that time. He has
Right.
not rescued anyone else since then.
No, but it did say that I am making this covenant with the people that are here and also those that are not here. So when he took them out and they went to Mount Sinai, that was the people who are here, and we are the people that are not here.
Yeah, the future generations. Yeah.
Right. So that's what this is talking about. The other part. We're the other part.
But they put it so cryptically.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Carry on, Sombra, carry on.
Okay. As also from Egypt, Pathros, Nubia, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and the coastlands. Ye will hold up a signal to the nations and assemble the banished of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And then Ephraim's envy shall cease and Judah's harassment shall end. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not harass Ephraim. They shall pounce on the back of Philistia to the west, and together plunder the peoples of the east. Edom and Moab shall be subject to them, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. Jehovah will dry up the tongue of the Egyptian sea. He will raise his hand over the Euphrates with the might of his wind and break it into 7 wadis, so that it can be trodden dry shod. And thus there shall be a highway for the other part of his people out of Assyria, just as there was for Israel when it left the land of Egypt. That's the end of mine. Look, he's silenced. He is silenced.
He's muted. Yeah.
I've been trying to yell at you. Your version, I'm
Yep.
glad you read your version. It really deflated or took the excitement out of this chapter. I got lines and colors and it's what?
It mentioned the banner. It kind of muted that too.
So verse 11, it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left. Where? From Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam and Shinar, from Hamath and the islands of the sea. Those are the places that Israel's going to be brought back from. Do you know where those places are?
Well, now, confusion. Assyria is the people of Germany. So it's also mentioned Assyria is a place where those people are coming from.
Yeah, well, of course, because it says they're going to have a highway coming down from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is a place of, well, is it a place of safety? It certainly is a place from where the people will come from.
Have you looked at the history of Germany?
No.
What? Come on, you have.
Well, only from what I'm studying briefly.
You've
I've
looked at the
never
history
been-
of the Germans. The Germans, what do they do with their prisoners?
Well, I know what they did do. I don't know what they do today.
They're no different today than they were 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, or 3,000 years ago. They're the same people, do the same
All
thing.
right, so they tortured them.
They take them and take them from their place,
Oh, sure,
transport them
yes.
out to someplace different.
Tactic, yes.
That's a tactic that they use. That's what they did in Assyria. That's what they did in Germany. And when they get them there, what do they do with them?
They enslave them.
Yeah. And when we found those enslavement camps, what happened? We were mortified.
Yeah.
Now, does anybody want to volunteer to go to one of those camps?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Hey, a good way to lose weight, but maybe not a good way.
Yeah, I don't think you got enough weight that would last that long.
Well, Nubia is south of Egypt, of what today is Egypt proper.
So we have Egypt. We know where that is. Nubia is what I call Cush in my Bible. Okay.
Right.
So Cush is the sort of like the horn, the horn and of Africa. It's now called Sudan and Ethiopia and Somalia. Now, have you seen the news lately there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethiopia is in a bad way.
Yeah, so is Kenya and Somalia. And you've heard about Somalia and their, what do they call the terrorist group there? So, and Sudan is not really hospitable to people either. So, but where's Pathros?
Pathros, you said was Burundi, what, didn't you?
Well, Pathros is the people at the ends of the Nile. So where does the Nile end?
Well,
There's
you
the
told
Blue
us.
Nile, there's a Blue Nile and there's a White Nile.
At its headwaters?
Yes, that's headwaters. Where are they?
I don't know.
I think that's called Lake, I want to say Lake Victoria, but I'm not sure. Lake
Lake
Victoria.
Titicaca? No, what's this lake called?
There's a big lake there, Kenya,
I'm almost there, hold on. It's not telling me the name of the lake.
Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania.
Yeah, is it Lake Titicaca? No, there it is. Yeah, Lake Tanganyika.
Okay. So, and then there's a whole bunch of fingers feeding into that lake. And one of those fingers, James was sitting there and sent me a picture. Guess what that is, he says. And I says, what? It looks like a ditch. He says, that's the start of the Nile. And he was sitting there in Bujumbura, Burundi.
Wow.
And I said, you gotta be kidding me. And that's where our ministry ended up there, just by accident. So that's one place. And Cush, as we just discussed, Elam and Shinar. Where's Elam? Where are the Elamites from? And Shinar,
Iran.
Iran.
Yeah.
And Turkey.
Shinar is Iraq. No, I'd be stretching it to say Turkey, but who knows where it's going to end up at that time. Where's Hamath? Now, I didn't know where Hamath was, so somebody sent it to me, and then I thought, oh, it's so obvious that once you see it. Hamath is Syria. There's actually a place, so you got Syria, Iraq, and Iran right there.
Well, Syria and Damascus, isn't that Damascus in Syria?
Damascus is in Syria, yes.
And basically, that's a war zone.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to be there.
And Americans are just loved there. Right? So is that someplace you want to come back from, Glenn? Well, if you get there, you're going to, hopefully you come out of there, but it's not a place you really want to be.
No.
And the islands of the sea. This
I'll
is
go there.
This one I seem to have fun with. So when we compare all the other scriptures of the islands of the sea, they eliminate certain ones. They eliminate the British Isles, they eliminate the Caribbean, they eliminate the Greek islands because they all have to be east of Jerusalem.
The only problem with Philippines is I don't see any horizontal land. It's all up and down and wet.
You'll lose
and for
weight,
old
Glenn.
people to climb, it's gonna be a painful thing.
Yeah. That's if you're looking at 60 years old. I'm looking at 160. So anyway, that's telling you where they're going to come back from. And the branch, the other scripture that Sombra so callously just read right over top of. The
Don't listen
branch.
to him.
So here's a little bit of homework for you. Go and look up all the scriptures that have the branch in it. In fact, why don't we just do that here? Because I know some of you won't do it. And we'll just go to share screen, still there. And this is Isaiah 11:1. Isaiah 11:1. So there we have the branch. Preserve, to watch over, to guard, in order to preserve. Keep, preserve, watchman, besiege, keeper, monument, preserver, subtle, hidden, watcher. Netzer, Browns River Briggs, netzer, that's such a great word. Sprout, twig, shoot, branch. Netzer. So here's where we have Isaiah 11:1, Isaiah 14:19. The branch.
I've only got 4 that use the word netzer.
Go back up there a little bit and talking about the green part, the striking part that makes you focus on it. In the sense of greenness as a striking color. You're going to pay attention to that, which is what the twig made you do.
Where are you seeing this? I don't see that anywhere here.
Down here, it says related words, the sense of greenness as a striking color.
Huh.
Twig made you
That's
sit up and pay attention.
So
That's,
I would think that's as opposed to the stump or the root or the main trunk. I would see that differentiation to green branch. That makes sense because it's not a wise necessarily or an experienced, fruitful, supporting structure. You see all the words I'm using, that's not what a branch does. A branch is holding the fruit and it's generally not strong enough it's being held up by the rest, by the main part.
Yeah. So here we have Isaiah 4:2. In that day shall the branch of Jehovah be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth excellent and comely for those who have escaped from Israel. Jeremiah 23:5. Behold, the days come, says Jehovah, that I will raise to David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and act wisely, and shall do judgment and justice in the earth. Jeremiah 33:15. In those days and at that time, I will cause the branch of righteousness to grow up to David, and he shall do judgment and righteousness in the land. Zechariah 3:8. Hear now, O Joshua, the high priest, you and your fellows who sit before you, for they are men of symbols. What's happened here? Where'd the branch go here? I gotta look that one up more. And Zechariah 6:12, and speak to him, saying, so speaks Jehovah of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall spring up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of Jehovah.
That one is Semak.
Zimak. Yeah, Simak.
Semak. That's the name of the star Spica. But there's only 4 in that whole list that are actually the word netzer. But
And that's where they get the word Nazarene, which is the name, the branches, the disciples. That's what we're referring to, and we as disciples were called the branches, the Nazarene.
I'm going to get out my red book to find out the difference between Semak and Netzer.
Cool. The red book.
Ella, go ahead.
Back in verse 11, all of that is talking about those in the Middle East. And then verse 12, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So is that extending beyond the Middle East to all of the world?
Well, okay. What is what are the four corners of the earth?
Well, it is in the two-dimensional, so that's kind of hard to determine. It depends on where you are. So you have to find your point. And
It's very, this is actually very specific, Glenn.
So you're from Israel.
Yeah.
Northeast, west, and south from Israel is where you have to set your base. So if you're everywhere around the world, it's confusing. But if you say points Israel, now you have some reference points.
So one of the corners of the earth, take your map, put Jerusalem in the middle. In the top left-hand corner was England. In the bottom right-hand corner was the Philippines. In the top right-hand corner would be Siberia, or maybe right beside Alaska, whatever they call that there, Siberia. And in the bottom left would be Argentina for South America.
Yeah.
But if you actually went to the top left again, it shouldn't be England, but that's what they considered England. It should actually be Alaska, right? I don't know. Did we answer you, Ella?
So is the United States not included in nations at all?
The United States throughout all the Bible is always spoken of as, well, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. They're always spoken of as Ephraim, Manasseh, or Jeshurun, Joseph, or Israel. And in that group can also be Judah or not be Judah. And Judah can also be a distinction of its own. So you have to read the Bible that way, with those names in mind and who they represent, so that you understand who they are. I'm not sure if I'm answering
the
you.
outcasts of Israel.
The outcasts of Israel, yes.
From the nations.
Yes.
Okay. Just curious.
Sandra, what'd you find?
Okay, so a samach is a sprout, to spring up, to grow. To flourish. Sprouted, sprang up, grew. Appeared. Caused to grow. The rain caused the earth to sprout. Okay, so that's something that comes up out of.
So it's like a sucker on an apple tree. It's a quick growing water sprout. It's very quick.
Okay. Whereas netzar is to watch, to guard, to keep, to put on the safety catch.
Okay, but to interrupt you, Sombra.
Yeah.
Drop down when you were looking at Samach. You got to drop down to the next. You read the most of the first meaning. Go to the second one.
Yeah, it says plant, sprout, growth in the name of the Messiah, dwelling, swelling.
Name of the Messiah.
Right. Okay. But the concept.
Hang on. The name of the Messiah is called Twig. Hey, Twiggy. Is that what you call him, Sombra?
Sprout. You want to be called Sprout?
He's the sprout of Jesse.
Well, the little green giant's got a little sprout.
Okay. So the difference is this netzar is somebody to watch or to guard, to convert to Christianity, to sprout, to shoot.
That's a big stretch. Who's put that in this What book you reading out of there?
This is the Klein's Etymological Dictionary.
Oh,
And he
wow.
says that?
Yeah, to convert
Wow.
to Christianity.
So they must be the real term of Christian, not the polluted one of today.
Well, hang on. No, let's back up a little bit because the Nazarenes or Netzarenes is what not Christians were called, is what the believers were called. And they were actually Jewish believers, and it was a condemnation. It's
They
like
were
being-
considered a cult of the Jews.
it was a sect of the Jews.
Sect,
Well,
sorry,
it was-
cult, sect.
Nazarot is translated as Christianity.
Yeah.
What I find interesting in there is you brought up to put on the safety catch, to watch, guard, keep, to put on the safety catch in brackets in a weapon.
So if you translate this word netzar to branch, that's a little different because
Well, you got to keep going back to the parables. There were two parables. One was, I am the vine, my father's the vine dresser. Those who do his will are grafted in. Those who don't get pruned out by the Father. Then there's another one, very similar, that it goes into branch. And a branch is supposed to produce fruit. So
but you can only produce fruit if you're guarding the commandments.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
My point. You got to connect it to somebody who has some knowledge of the main trunk,
which is the root. The root is the Torah.
Yes.
So let me just pipe in here what Brad Scott taught me about this long time ago. And he said, everything you need to know is in this child's picture. And you got a house, you got a person in front of the house, you got a tree. That's every child's picture. It's the same picture over and over. The house, the bait, the person in front of the house, the parents, the aleph, and the tree of life. And the tree of life has these shoots that go out, and they're called netzers. And they bring back, through the shoots, they continually bring you back to the tree of life. And that's what a netzer does. It brings you back. That's what an apostle does. He brings you back to the tree of life.
Because he watches, he guards, he keeps, he puts on the safety catch.
An apostate takes you away from the tree of life, takes you away from the truth, takes you away to somewhere else. That's all I remember about what Brad Scott taught.
Right.
That's it.
I think it's interesting that they use the safety catch idea. Well, that's if you got a rifle, we were talking about a rifle here is what it's talking about to me. The safety catch, or it could be some other medieval type of weapon, but a safety catch, that's the safety. That means you've got cartridge in the chamber. It's dangerous. But you've got the safety on, so it's safe, but it's ready to go at a moment's notice. You flick it off and something's going to happen.
Yeah, it takes 2 moves to get it to go instead of 1.
I'm failing to see the connection though, Kurt. I'm not connecting with what you're saying about the safety and the branch and
because the shoot goes out, like you said, it goes out. A gun goes out, the arrow goes out, but you got to make sure it goes out appropriately. It goes out the right way. You can't just shoot off willy-nilly. You can't just say, oh, I'm Jesus and I can do anything. Jesus has to do exactly what Jehovah says he is. He has to obey the rules. He has to be exactly like his father. He cannot be different than his father. You cannot have the Holy Spirit.
It's controlled power.
I see a connection to casting pearls before swine.
or making a horse.
Check
Full
your
power.
words. If you check your words, okay, is this going out uselessly? Okay, just put that back. Just bite your tongue. Maybe that's your teeth. The safety catches the sheen, your teeth.
It's a filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this, folks, or shall we move on to Psalms?
We've got to move on because I don't have any more fingers to put in my book. Gotta find a new subject.
Bye, Chris and Anik.
Psalms 122. I'm going to read that. Whoever thought they had a short one, I'm going to steal it.
Oh,
Oh, man.
geez. No way.
Who is up for this?
It was me. Go ahead, brother.
I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem." Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together, where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to the testimony of Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. For thrones are there for judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brethren and companions, I will now say, peace be within you. Because of the house of the Lord of God, I will seek your good. Now, in what I've just read is a gem. Anybody see it or know what it is? Okay, James, I can hear James. Is James still here? Joe saying, Joe says, I know something you don't know. I know something you don't know. Okay. When David restored Jerusalem, what did David do?
He built the Milo.
He built the
Rebuilt the
Milo. What's the Milo, Glenn?
The retaining wall and the moat.
It's not a retaining wall. It's a rampart.
Rampart. I was going to say rampart, but I confused them together.
And the rampart is it's a wall. It's got a belly in the bottom part, so you have to climb out. You can't just climb up. And then it comes back in to form what becomes the turret. Turret, right? That's the wall part. And then there's the moat part.
Do you mean a turret?
Turret, I'm sorry, turret. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Then there's the moat part, which is like in Scotland, we have moat with water in, but in Israel, they don't have water, so they're dry moats. Okay. So that was the city of David that David restored and rebuilt. That goes back to Daniel 9 and the prophecy about him building the walls or rebuilding the walls. Yeshua never did that. David did. Okay. Now, what did Solomon do to that moat? Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together.
He filled it in.
He filled it in and he compacted it.
Yeah.
And upon that moat, next to the rampart, which is called the Acra, Solomon built the temple. Solomon's temple was built there. The Acra, which is the rampart where the moat used to be, it's still the wall with the turret on top. That's the Acra. That's where the Syrians were lodged in, shooting the arrows at the Maccabees, who were keeping, not Hanukkah, who were trying to keep the sacrifices, not just at this time of year, but throughout the year. And the Maccabees, after they captured back the Acra and got rid of the Syrians, and they had to clean up the altar as well because the blood and urine and feces that are on it. And when you wash them down, they go down in the stones. And I believe it's Isaiah 25. they took down the city of David down to the very foundations. They took it down and they made the upper city, which is the city of David. They turned it into the lower city, and they made what was the lower city, which was on the other side of the Cheese Valley, made that into the upper city, which is now called Zion, Mount Zion. That's where the Zion Gate is. So here's the city of David. And as John Hyrcanus had to take it down to the very foundations. And all that dirt that they took away, they put over here and raised up and made the Zion at the outside the Zion Gate.
So to your left would be the current temple. So you were looking at the way you just did that. To your left hand would be the Fort Antonio, the current temple.
No.
No, okay, I need bearing.
Okay. My left hand would be the city of David.
Okay.
Okay. My right hand would be, you're looking at it, which way is that? North and south. I want you to look at it east and west. So
Okay.
here's the city of David. So that's the city of David. Over here's the Mount of Olives. City of David. This is Mount Zion up at Zion
Gotcha.
Gate.
Okay, got you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
To the west. And they worked on that for 3 years, day and night. According to Maccabees. That's the story of Maccabees that nobody reads at this time of year. That's the story you should be reading. They took down the temple, not the temple. They took down the city of David for 3 years, day and night, and made it into the lower city. And when you go to Jerusalem now, that bedrock is still there. And that's what I take people to tour. That's why you cannot find the city of David. It's not there.
Okay, so again, for everyone and for myself too, where was the original temple in relation to what you just said?
Okay, so we have, if I go like this is Mount Zion. This is the Mount of Olives.
Yeah.
This is the city of David right there, these two.
Yeah.
And this is the Mount Zion.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the Zion Gate. So now turn them. Okay. This, the city of David, and to the north of the city David is the temple.
Okay.
Or the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah. Okay. Which is not the temple, the true temple.
It's the fortress. It's King Solomon's palace. It's the buildings where they did all the administration.
So it's north of all this.
Yes.
Okay, got you, Barry. Good.
So the city that is compact, that's what Solomon did. That's a key verse here. Isaiah 25, I believe, is the other one. So maybe we'll get that one day. I better get ready for it because it's a very interesting.
So question, Joe, is that what you're saying? Am I gathering it right? If I said that the stones that were used to build the city of David were taken away and taken up to build what's today the Temple Mount?
No.
Okay.
So, okay, so time period. Solomon did this in 970. He built the temple in 970. Yeah, 967 BC. Okay. The temple's destroyed in 586. It's rebuilt by Zechariah and Zerubbabel. When they come back after the captivity in 536, somewhere around there, BC. Then we get to the Maccabean times in 160, 162 BC. And the Syrians have taken charge of the Acra, and they're shooting arrows at the priests as they make the sacrifice. You read that in the story of the Maccabees. That's the story you should be reading, not the thing about lighting candles that never happened. The Maccabees were being attacked. The priests were being shot at. The Syrians and Epiphanes did all the terrible things in the altar. Afterwards, John Hyrcanus is left there. He's the high priest. He has to make a decision. What do I do with this disaster? How do I stop this from ever happening again? And there's a conflict of interest there in Jerusalem. And a group of people leave. They are so mad, they leave. Who are these people that leave? We call them today the Essenes. And they go down to Qumran, and they believe that John Hyrcanus is about to destroy the temple. Therefore, the Messiah must be coming, and they believe this Messiah is coming, and they prepare themselves by making themselves pure. Those Essenes wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and those Dead Sea Scrolls talk about the evil king, John Hyrcanus, and the good righteous king, which is the leader of the Essenes. That's the history that the Maccabees does not teach you when you're lighting Hanukkah. But that's the story you should learn.
Yeah, I just saw a picture today. 9 candles. I think it's supposed to be 7, no?
I don't know, my Bible said make the menorah with 7.
I think that's what it says.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and what I'm working on the new book, and I'm talking about the Netzarenes in the chapter I'm working on right now. And the whole thing is, as soon as the saints, as soon as there's a group of people that are pure or righteous, another group goes with them that are not pure or not righteous, and they mix everything up. Every age, from the time of Yeshua, Paul, the apostles, there's always this mixing of 2 different groups of people, both of them claiming that they are the way. Until we get down to our day today, we have the same thing, only there's much more than 2. It's amazing history. We have such a awesome, unbelievable history. If we only knew it, it would save us a lot of headaches on a lot of different areas. So we don't normally spend this much time in Psalms. This is pretty good. I love that scripture though. It's always a scripture I can never find when I go to look for it. Anyone else got anything more they want to say on this or ask about this? Okay, John, is that John? Yeah, John 5:30.
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Oh, we got. Can you hear
That's
me
better.
now?
That's better.
Okay. I can do nothing on my own initiative. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just because I do not seek my own will, but the will of him who sent me. If I alone bear witness of myself, my testimony is not true. There is another who bears witness of me, and I know that the testimony which he bears of me is true. You have sent to John, and he has borne witness to the truth. But the witness which I receive is not from man. But I say these things that you may be saved. He was the lamp that was burning and was shining, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. But the witness which I have is greater than that of John. For the works which the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works that I do bear witness of me, that the Father has sent me. And the Father who sent me, he has borne witness of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his form, and you do not have his word abiding in you, for you do not believe him whom he sent. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you will have eternal life. And it is these that bear witness of me, and you are unwilling to come to me that you may have life. I do not receive glory from men, but I know you, that you do not have the love of God in yourselves. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another shall come in his own name, you will receive him. How can you believe when you receive glory from one another, and you do not seek the glory that is from the one and only God? Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you is Moses, in whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? Chapter 6, after these things, Yeshua went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias, and a great multitude was following him, because they were seeing the signs which he was performing on those who were sick. And Yeshua went up on the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Yeshua, therefore, lifting up his eyes, and seeing that a great multitude was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread that these may eat?" And this he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many people?" Yeshua said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. Yeshua therefore took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed to those who were seated, likewise also of the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost." And so they gathered them up, and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. When therefore the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, "This is of a truth the prophet who is to come into the world." Yeshua therefore, perceiving that they were intending to come and take him by force to make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. Now when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, and after getting into a boat, they started to cross the sea to Capernaum. And it had already become dark, and Yeshua had not yet come to them. And the sea began to be stirred up, because a strong wind was blowing. When therefore they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they beheld Yeshua walking on the sea and drawing near to the boat, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." They were willing therefore to receive him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going. The next day, the multitude that stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other small boat there except one, and that Yeshua had not entered with his disciples into the boat, but that his disciples had gone away alone. There came other small boats from Tiberias near to the place where they ate the bread after the Lord had given thanks. When the multitude therefore saw that Yeshua was not there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into the small boats and came to Capernaum seeking Yeshua. And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Yeshua answered them and said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me not because you saw signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled. Do not work for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man shall give to you. For on him the Father, even God, has set his seal."
Thank you, Shauna. And as we read this, I'm reminded of one of our tours that we did in Israel. And this was back in 2011. And we were a day off of the Jewish high holy days. So we went to Tel Dan. on our, no, it was the day before our holy day. It was a Jewish high holy day, so we were okay. And after we went to tell Dan, we were supposed to leave and come back, and Avi had a surprise for us, and he took us to a restaurant. Well, the sun had already set. We were well into our Sabbath, the first high holy day of Sukkot. And everybody just walked into the restaurant, sat down, started ordering meals, and the people started making meals. And I didn't go into the restaurant. I said, what the heck? Are we stupid? I refused to go into the restaurant. And I sat out in the parking lot stewing, because our whole group, all Torah believers, had just gone in and broken the Sabbath. Now, either you believed in the Hillel calendar, which meant you shouldn't have gone on the tour with us that day, or you believed in the crescent moon calendar, which means that you shouldn't be eating that night in a restaurant or having other people work for you, which meant that the bus driver was working for us. We should have been home already. So I'm out in the parking lot stewing because I'm stuck here. I can't get out of it now. I'm stuck. And everyone's coming out looking for me. They're calling for me. I won't answer. I just stayed away until they were done, got back on the bus. And then I got in the bus and we went home, and I just didn't say nothing. I was pissed. We got back there, and one of the ladies from South Africa said, what's the matter? And we went for a walk, and I told her, I said, the rest of this tour is going to be a disaster. And these are the things that are about to happen. We're going to have troubles with the bus, an accident or something. There's going to be people getting sick. There's going to be things happening. And she said, no, no, no. And the next day, the bus was 2 hours late. We got to our Capernaum here, where this story is being talked about. And it's 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. People are sick. That night, that same night, we were staying in Avi's house, and the sewage backed up, and all the downstairs were flooded with raw sewage, and the street had raw sewage on it. It stunk, and it didn't get fixed overnight. So all these things were going on all that next night, or that night and next day. And then we had an accident with the bus. And we get to this place here, and people are fading away. There's one lady looked like she was about to die of a heart attack. And our tour is getting just destroyed. Nobody, people are walking at a snail's pace, and it's brutal. I said, Avi, this is what we've done. We've sinned because we ate in the restaurant on the high holy day. We need to repent right now. Avi couldn't see it. He didn't think anything was wrong. And I got mad, and I started to walk away, and he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want the people to repent. And he said, okay, well, go and tell them to. So I explained it to the people, and they didn't think they sinned. They thought it was okay to go eat in the restaurant on Sabbath. And so I called one of the guys that was objecting, asked him if he would pray for us all. He had a good, strong voice. I didn't feel qualified to pray in front of everybody. I was pretty mad at the time. And so he did. And then I added a couple little things afterwards and asked Jehovah to forgive us. We walked out of there. We were in a hurry to get on the Sea of Galilee. We had to be on the Sea of Galilee at a certain time. We had to go to Peter's house there in Capernaum and do that. And there's a whole bunch of Christians there. It was very packed, and we were pressed for time. And we got a phone call from the Sea of Galilee people saying that the Jesus boat that we could go on was going to be available at 4 o'clock, just as the sun was setting, and we could have the sunset tour for the same price. It's normally a little bit higher, which meant that we had the whole afternoon at Capernaum, where we could have a nice lunch and go sit in the water and just relax, because we've been pushing pretty hard on this tour. The people that were about to have a heart attack, you can see a video of me dancing with them on the boat on the Sea of Galilee.
I saw that one. You posted it. It was nice. It looked like everybody was happy. You
I
were
was-
happy.
I was thrilled
You were dancing.
because I seen the miracle of Jehovah blessing us. And everyone else on that tour saw that miracle of Jehovah blessing us when we repented from breaking the Sabbath. The people that were sick and about to die, all of a sudden had a whole new life. It can't explain it. Every year I go to Jerusalem, these miracles happen that you can't explain. But this verse, this where he crossed, where he came out, that was Capernaum. Where he crossed from, where he fed the, what, 4,000, 5,000 people. You sit in that place and the landscaping is such a way that if I speak in a whisper, a person 200 yards away can hear me as if I'm talking in their ear. So Yeshua is giving his sermon there, and he's just talking in a regular little voice like I am, and people hundreds and hundreds of yards away can hear us. And we did the experiment. We had somebody talk and somebody go 200 yards out, and just we could hear everything they were saying. Even when they turned their back to us, we could hear everything they were saying. Such a cool place. Anyway, that's, I felt I wanted to tell you my little story here. But again, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, the Sabbath is a test. And when you break the Sabbath, things start to happen to you. They happen to our group. You just don't realize it. And then all of a sudden everything's going bad. That's what this part of the Bible here reminds me of. One of those tours that we did in Israel. Anyway, I'm sorry. Anyone got any questions or comments on this section of the Bible? Any other comments about what we've talked about today?
Yeah, Vivian is asking right there. What is sinful about eating in a restaurant on the Sabbath?
Okay, so let's, Randy, open up your Bible. I want you to read Revelation, or not Revelation, Exodus chapter 19, Exodus chapter 20, I think verse 6.
Exodus 26.
20, verse 6.
Yes, sir. But showing loving commitment to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands.
Okay, keep going. I want you to read about the
Yes.
Sabbath.
You do not bring the name of Jehovah, your Elohim, to naught, for Jehovah does not leave one unpunished who brings his name to naught. Verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. 6 days you labor and shall do all your work. But on the seventh day is the Sabbath of Jehovah, your Elohim. You do not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates.
Okay, so just on that verse alone, when you go in a restaurant, is somebody serving you?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Is somebody preparing the meal?
Mhm.
Is somebody slaving away in a kitchen, doing your meal and 1,000 other people's meals?
Yep.
Are you breaking the Sabbath? Now, let me ask Kurt, because Kurt and I both, and Glenn too, we all come out of the Worldwide Church of God. We used to go out on the Sabbath, Friday
Yeah.
night or Saturday afternoon, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And they always questioned it. Oh,
Yeah.
it's okay. They're going to do that anyway, was the answer. So we
Yeah.
might as well get served.
They're pagans.
Yeah.
Kurt, same thing for you?
Yeah. One that really comes to mind is what was called the night to be much remembered, which is really the beginning of the first day of unleavened bread.
Yeah, Passover.
And that was a big deal to go out to a restaurant and have them special room just for us.
You know what? Towards the end there, we started to do that, and I always loved going to somebody's house that night. It felt very special. But when they started to go to the restaurants, because I
Yeah.
would save someone doing all the dishes, it wasn't so special anymore. It was just like,
Yeah, sacrilege.
yeah. Okay, so Vivian says, what's sinful about eating in the restaurant? So first of all, in the restaurant, you have now hired somebody to bring you your food. You've hired somebody to cook your meal. And then you're basically doing business. You're doing a business transaction because you're not giving, like, I'm not giving you the meal for free. You're paying me for it. So it's a business transaction. You've employed people, you've hired people. So those are all the things you've done wrong. Verse 8, he says, yeah, okay, well, that's where we started. We started a couple early. Does that answer you, Vivian? Again, what is the sign of Jehovah? What is his test commandment? It's the Sabbath.
It's putting that engagement ring and putting it in your pocket to go and eat in the restaurant. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not being faithful. It's trying to find another way around that commitment. That's how I look at it.
I always say that there are certain people that find ways to get around from keeping the law.
Yeah.
Instead of finding ways to keep the law. So, yeah, if you are invited out, I was on tour one time and I distinctly said, we are not doing anything after, like I'm speaking on Saturday, I spoke all day Saturday at this group. And I says, after we're done, I'm not doing anything. No, it was Friday. Sorry, I spoke Friday night, I spoke. And it says, we got nothing lined up for Saturday. I says, great. I just want to stay in the room. We'll chill. We'll do a little Bible study and that'd be awesome. And there's another Church of God group in the same building doing a teaching that same day in another room. So we had the whole hotel filled with these two different groups. And I thought this would be awesome, go and talk to these other people. And that was my plan for the Sabbath and then that day. As I'm speaking Friday, I see my suitcases being brought into the hall where we were speaking. And as I'm talking, I'm speaking what I'm teaching, but in my mind, I'm saying, what the hell's going on? And I'm afraid that's going to come out my mouth. And what's going on here? That's why are they bringing my suitcase? Anyway, somebody had offered us a much nicer room, which meant that we had to book into that room on the Sabbath. And they wanted to take us out for a picnic at the beach the next day. And I thought, okay, a picnic at the beach would be fine. But they neglected to tell me some of the little details, like the staff at the hotel was our driver. So they hired a driver. I thought that was his son. No, it's the driver. And they took us to this beach where you had to pay for a taxi, a boat taxi to take you across over to the beach. And then you had 15 waiters serving you in the hotel. And I'm looking at my host, I'm thinking, what the heck have you done here? I said, we weren't going to do anything like this.
Are these Jewish owners of these businesses?
No.
All right. I was going to say.
And I don't want to identify who it is. So
Yeah, that's fine.
I couldn't believe, and because they said, we're just going to the beach. And yet I got roped into it again and I got mad. And you have to guard the Sabbath. Those people knew after that there was nothing going to happen on any more Sabbaths. And they didn't book nothing for it. They knew how mad I got. But you have to guard it. It's a sign. It's your sign to Jehovah. It's so important. Like Glenn says, it's your wedding ring. It's your engagement ring. It's your engagement ring. And to blow the potential that he's giving you, to blow that for what? Tim Hortons dessert? What are you blowing it for? The convenience of having a Swiss chalet meal,
Little physical flesh pleasure.
something you're going to poop out tomorrow. That's what you're blowing it for? Like, how stupid are you?
Might
Come
even
on.
be better to fast than to do that.
Again, so now, on the other hand, when we were going to church, when we were meeting at certain places on Shabbat, some people would have to take a bus in order to get there. And this always bothered me as well, because that bus driver's working. He has to work or he's not going to have a job. So I began to tell people, well, stay at home or get somebody, that's going to church with you to drive you. They didn't own a car. They didn't have a car, couldn't afford a car. Figure out a way. Come in town, stay overnight. Can't do that. Anyway, there are all kinds of excuses and all kinds of problems that you can come up with.
People who work, the way the clock works, in the summer, sunset's not till, 7, 8, and obviously you're out of work by say 9 to 5 or something, right? Well, nowadays, people are working their 9 to 5 job and it's, sunsets at 4:10, 4:20. They're working and they just violated the Sabbath. I've had people just say to me, well, I gotta work. I mean, I gotta, they're ordering out to get delivered home. Well, I gotta eat. Well, you should have thought of that before the sunset. That's the whole point. Sometimes, even now, if I want something on Friday, I'll get it at 4 o'clock. I'm not gonna eat it at 4, but I'll get it at 4 o'clock and then eat it later. I mean, if I want something and I'm not going to make it myself, I make sure that I'm not being served after the Sabbath.
I work in construction, or I used to work in construction, and it was a 10-hour day every day, which meant that we would be done at 5:30. Then at 5:30, we would drive back to wherever we had to go. And that was usually done on our own time. And so that's a half hour to an hour getting back to the shop. And then that's 6:30, and from 6:30, I would still have to drive an hour or two to get home. And I did that every day for 40 years. So when I started doing the Sabbath, I would work 12 hours a day during the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I'd only work 8 hours or 5 hours on Friday. And when you're on a union site, that was really easy to do. But when I got on some of these non-union sites, that became really hard to do. So I remember one time I got done early at 12 o'clock. And the owner caught me and said, Joe, you need to take that truck and take it out to those guys. They need that wire. And I says, you know what? I'm leaving at 4 o'clock. Actually, that's not true. I have to leave that job site at 3 o'clock to get back here by 4 o'clock so I can be out of here. And he said, well, I don't care what you do, that the reel on that truck's got to be out there. They need that. Well, I put that truck through the gears and I was speeding all the way there. I threw the stuff off on the ground and the boy said, we need to hold this pole. I says, you hold the pole with the backhoe, I'm gone. And I turned around and I left and I got the truck back there by 4:15 and everybody was ticked off because I was supposed to hold the poles for them, set the poles for them that day. He says, no. And it happened again, another Friday, another emergency. And I says, no, I'm leaving. But I had the choice. Now, here's a different example. Friday afternoons on a different job, we used to put a torpedo in the ground. A torpedo is a thing that chugged the lug underneath the ground, banging a hole so you could stick a pipe in. And we would put them in, we'd have to do about, 10 services a day. And every Friday afternoon, when I put the torpedo in the ground, I hit a water main. Every single Friday.
It's a test.
And you blow up the water and the whole front yard's flooded and you got all these people that I'd be there till 8 o'clock midnight fixing it. Now, that was my ox in the ditch.
Yeah.
Those people needed the water. They might not be keeping the Sabbath, or they might be keeping the Sabbath, but I had to provide them water. So I had to stay late. And I've done that a number of times. And I was mad that I stuck the torpedo in at 12 o'clock. I should not have stuck the torpedo in at Friday at all. So we got a new rule after about 4 times of this, that never put anything in the ground that could break something Friday afternoon. And so we spent most of our Fridays just doing cleanups where we bring sod and topsoil. We never even put tobacco in the ground so we didn't hit a hydro line. But you start planning for your Fridays. I'm saying this, you plan for your Fridays, you start planning for your Friday Monday morning. Right? That's when you start planning what's going to happen towards the end of the week. What is that crisis that's going to happen? So right now, I'm looking after my mom. I go and buy my mom groceries so she doesn't have to go in and get with crowds. She calls me Friday afternoon. I got no this or no that. I said, well, I just went shopping for you Monday. Okay, so do I have time to go get it? I try and take care of mom Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, she's not in need of anything. But that, you got to plan for these things. I've been talking for quite a while. Sorry. Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, for somebody like me who can't cook at home, on Shabbat, I'm out. And if I go through a drive-through for a burger, I don't feel like that's an offense. And I think the fact that Matthew 12 talks about it, I don't think it's that big of an issue.
Well, hang on. What does Matthew 12 say?
I'll read it now.
Okay.
At the time Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, his disciples were hungered. He began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. But the Pharisees saw it. They said to him, behold, the disciples do that which is not lawful on the Sabbath day.
What
but
are
he
they
said
doing?
to them, have you not read what David did when he was hungered, and that they were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which is not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests? Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? But I say unto you that in this place one is greater than the temple. But if you know what this means, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. You would not condemn the guiltless. For the Son of Man is even Lord of the Sabbath.
Michelle, what did you just read? When Yeshua was going through the grain field, what were they doing?
They were eating.
Well, they were picking the heads of the grains.
And ate, because they were hungry.
Okay. What year is it that they're doing this in?
They're doing it in the years of agricultural times where we don't have grains of corn to walk through.
No. Michelle, what they're doing is it's a sabbatical year. The wheat is free for everybody to eat.
Well, it wasn't about that. It was they were picking.
But it was about that.
Doing what's not lawful on the Sabbath.
You can pick grains of barley on the Sabbath. You can prepare food on the Sabbath.
Okay, so
you cannot do a turkey dinner on the Sabbath.
10-course meal.
You can warm it up on the Sabbath, right? So they're walking.
You should be able to pick up a sandwich.
Hang on, Michelle, hang on. Let's read what it says and not interpret it to justify ourselves. It says that they walked through the fields, which were open to anybody, and they picked some heads of grain, they rubbed them in their hands, and they ate the wheat. That's not work. Or if it is work, then it would be stealing because they stole, but it's not stealing because it's a sabbatical year.
They're not buying and selling it either.
They're not buying and selling it. So if everybody was obeying the Sabbath, if everybody in our society was obeying the Sabbath, would you be able to go and buy that sandwich or that hamburger on Shabbat?
Now you're talking about a Pollyanna system of the new world to come. Nobody.
No, I'm not talking about Pollyanna. I'm asking you a straight up question. If everybody kept Sabbath today.
Yeah, nobody would be working. No.
Then if nobody would be working, are you breaking the Sabbath by causing somebody to work for you and going to buy their burger or their Because if nobody bought their food on Sabbath, they wouldn't be there.
Well, I get that, but that's not what's going on.
Well, you just
There
said
were any.
you bought a sandwich or a hamburger on Shabbat. So there's a money transaction and somebody's working for you.
Yeah, it's just like being served, like UCG would do, or the Worldwide. You go
Yeah.
into restaurants, it's the same thing. You're transacting business that you can do any other day of the week. You're working or you're causing someone to work, you're exchanging money, which are all things that you can do 6 days of the week. You shouldn't be doing on the Sabbath.
So you know that you can't cook in your house on Shabbat. So go and buy your hamburger Friday afternoon. And
I can't cook in my house ever.
You can put it on the heater of your car and warm it up. I've done that. Or I've also done this. I fasted on the Sabbath many times.
Yeah, but she doesn't have to do that. She could go to the grocery store on Friday afternoon and leave herself some cold cuts in her car and a banana and a salad and that kind of stuff. Leave it in her car because she spends Shabbat in her car. She could prepare that way instead of choosing to buy at a restaurant.
What we're saying, though, Michelle, is you begin to plan for your Shabbat. You know what's coming in on Shabbat. You know that you can't do this in your house, okay? Then you plan for it. And that planning starts tomorrow, starts tonight, after Sabbath. You just plan for it and find ways to obey. And guess what? When you do that, stuff happens that
Blessings
you can't
happen.
explain.
Yeah.
Good stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, and I just have to say, I know a few people
Sandra,
that
I like your idea. I think I'll get a cooler and do that.
Yeah.
That's probably the best selection because I can lock it up in my car and it'll be fine if I get a cooler.
Michelle,
I know a few people that are that do these little infractions, and then they talk to me about the calamity in their life, and I go, well, your priorities are messed up. You're not looking after His will completely. You're like saying, well, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, okay, it's okay to do. No, actually, it's not. You should be erring on really, have 10 more minutes extra before Shabbat and have all your stuff done. Now you're way ahead of the game. You're not going to even have a remote chance of violating it at all. I used to err on the side of, it's sunset. I just got to finish this for 5 more minutes. And then I changed my mind. And now peace, what Kay was speaking of earlier, peace. That's what you get. If you don't do that and you don't have His heart to do it, you're going to have chaos and calamity. That's what I see.
Problems come. Kurt, did you want to say something before I go to Sombra? If you
Yeah,
don't get
just
it in, Sombra won't let you talk.
just I don't want to butt in. I see their hands up. But,
I'd let you butt in. It's Sombra.
I'll get a shot later for that. Michelle, there's a 12-volt cooler that you can buy. It's made by Coleman. I have one, and it works really well. You can plug it into your cigarette lighter, and it works good to keep food cool.
Can you put that in the chat so I can see what you're talking about? And then I could go look at it. That would be great.
You'd have to go to, I don't know.
I'll do it for you.
Actually, but it works really well, and it'll might be a solution for you.
Okay, Sombra.
Okay, so I want to know if we go by the moon in Israel to start our month, why don't we use the sundown in Israel to start our day?
Sabbath. Okay, are you
Well,
seriously going to
it's a
ask
question.
that, or are you
Well,
just
I
trying
am going to ask that because there are places in Canada that don't get any daylight in the wintertime and don't get any nighttime in the summertime.
Okay,
so when do
now
they?
that's a good question. And the one you were about to ask before, I thought, oh, what are you doing here? But
Well,
okay. Yeah, no, I'm just giving you a hard time because I love you and I can. So what we were taught, Kurt, why don't I let you answer that? What were we taught in that situation? Because I think it's a good answer if you got the same answer I do.
I don't know if I was actually taught it, not by the church certainly, but there was men that the first man that I came in contact with the church, or kind of actually the ones that got me started to where I am today, really. They kept it from 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. Whether the sun was down or not, they kept it that way to address that problem, because it gets complicated. If you're in Alaska and you don't see the sun, when does the sun actually go down, right?
Well, if you go straight down and you have a time zone below you, all right, the more north you go, the less light, or eventually to the point where you either all night or all day, depending on what season. But if you go straight south to the equator, you have a time zone that has a sunrise and a sunset. I suppose you could use that, right?
So what I was taught was that what Glenn said, go to the nearest city south of you that has light, and then use that time zone for you. Also, what Kirk said is also usable. You have to determine yourself based on the situation. So in the summertime, the sun never sets. It gets down to a certain point and then it goes up again like this. In the wintertime, you don't see it in the north. Same in the south in the Arctic Circle. So you have to determine, what are you closer to? Are you closer to Manitoba? You're closer to British Columbia? Which time zone? Then I'm going to pick that time and I'm going to keep that 24-hour period. And you work it out with prayer and fasting with Jehovah, right?
Because I do supper time to supper time on Shabbat. I don't do sundown to sundown, because sundown goes down at 4 here.
Not 4 o'clock is that's Sabbath. Whenever the sun goes down, that's when the Sabbath is. So you should be going by the sunset.
See, normally we would be going out to eat before sunset on Friday, but now we can't because it's 4:10 here is sunset. So like I said, it kind of bites but it really doesn't, because all I do is flip it. Where Saturday I can't go out because it's later or earlier, depends on what it is. I'll just flip it. I'll go, hey, we'll go out Saturday night after sunset.
Yeah,
which is easy because that's awesome. So I just flip it around and it's not like a bother. All I'm doing is switching a day.
Yep. Okay.
One more question in the chat. They're talking about animals. What do you do about your chickens and your cows and your whatevers on the Shabbat?
You feed them.
Yeah.
It's not, the ox in the ditch is you go out there and you help your ox get out of the ditch. You help your animal. If you have animals that, we have farmers who have milkers. They got 50 head of cattle or 100 head of cattle that need to be milked twice a day. If you don't, their udders get sore and hurts the cattle. So even in Jerusalem.
But you don't sell the milk that you get on Shabbat.
Right.
There's nobody coming to pick it up. You're just doing it to help the cattle. You're doing it to help whatever animal. You're not slaughtering. You're not, if you got to feed your goats and chickens, you got to feed your goats and chickens. Right? So, but you try and do as much as you can beforehand. Whatever you can. Again, every situation is unique. Everyone is different. And you got to work it out and plan it with Jehovah. Okay, Kay, go ahead.
Well, that's one thing I was going to say to the lady that is wanting a cooler, is that in that Bible verse that in Matthew that she referred to, the gleaning of the fields was left for the poor, I think, all the time, and the sojourner. And that wasn't a sin. It wasn't breaking Sabbath. So the people that were accusing of that were wrong. They weren't. And he also referred to David and his men who were on the run being hunted. And they gave them the bread from the day before from the holy place. Because in Hebrew, and I am teaching that this week, and I hope I've got this right, but it's called something like pikuach nefesh, which means watching over the soul overrides the preservation of human life. So in David's situation, in that verse that she brought out, you know, their life was at stake because they were being hunted down. And another example is Corrie ten Boom. She basically lied, so that makes her a liar. So was that wrong when they came to her home and said, "Are you hiding any Jews here?" And she said no. And so she was preserving life. So that rules over God hates a lying tongue in that situation. And so I just wanted to explain that verse to her, since I just so happened to be teaching that on Tuesday, that if she, and then I wanted to also encourage her, if you want to keep the Sabbath because you love God and because that is a sign between him and you that you are his, if that is important to you, then pray to Jehovah and say, help me, because I can tell you from personal experience that I have fought myriads of people on this for so many years, including myself. And some of my family members, which is the second part to my question and comment, is that will Orthodox Jews to unscrew their light bulbs in their refrigerator on Shabbat? And don't you know that if you have your air or heat running, that you're purchasing that energy on Shabbat? So these types of things will come up to you, these types of questions. And I don't really know where to draw the line on those types of things, but I will tell you, if I was convinced, if one of y'all could convince me that I should turn off my power and unscrew my light bulbs,
yeah,
then I'd be willing, but I'm not there yet.
That's funny, Kay. That's funny. That's when I started, when I first discovered the Sabbath, that's what I did. I lived in a house that didn't have gas. I had electricity, but no, I used my lights, but I didn't light a fire on Shabbat. There were some days it got to be pretty cool in the house. I didn't get ice on the water bucket, but it was pretty cool. And someone kind of pointed out, he said, maybe, you probably can have a fire, like make it nice for your wife, right? Don't freeze your wife out. So,
in my house today, if I had no heat on right now for 24 hours, my pipes would freeze.
Yeah.
And then once I turned my heat back on, my pipes would burst. So,
what is that scripture actually talking about? Since how you brought it up here now, when it says you shall not kindle a fire on Shabbat?
An argument.
I think it's actually talking about a fire for the purpose of work, like firing bricks or metallurgy.
Or how about the splitting the cordwood, getting your fire ready, or your stockpile ready for your fire, or gathering your wood off of, an acre or two, and you're working to gather that into the pile. You know what? If you've got the pile next to your fireplace is going at sunset, you just throw a couple pieces of wood in it.
So let me ask this question. On a high holy day, are you allowed to prepare a meal?
Yes.
Except for atonement.
Except for, well, of course, atonement. But if you're allowed to prepare a meal on a high holy day, are you lighting a fire?
Probably.
Most likely.
Most likely, yeah. So when it says, thou shalt not, and I can't remember what verse this is in, thou shalt not kindle a fire on Shabbat. if somebody can pop that one up. Is that Exodus 35?
Somewhere
Or
there.
what- Is it? I don't know. Vivian's got it there. And anyway,
Vivian
somebody
says
look that up for me.
Exodus 35.
What does it mean? Is somber supposed to get froze out every Shabbat? Is
Well, I
Shabbat
don't
supposed to be
think-
miserable?
In those days, starting a fire, they didn't have Bic lighters. They didn't have matches. You know, they had a string and a stick. That seems a lot of work to get this going, you know?
Well, the work is involved in collecting the wood,
Yeah.
splitting the wood, chopping the wood up so it fits in the fireplace or the furnace, whatever. Yeah, I used to have all my wood stacked, ready inside, because my fire outside was, 50 feet away, 60 feet away. So I would bring it in Thursday, have it there ready, dry it out Friday, have the fireplace ready to light. As soon as I got home, Bic lighter, boom, off she went. Beautiful. And lovely fires, lovely fires. Keep it going all night. If it ran out over the night, that meant I had to go out and get more wood and bring it back in. To go out during the Shabbat and grab an armful of wood to bring in from the garage, that wasn't a big deal. I didn't have to take, a whole wheelbarrow load.
Right.
It was just a couple pieces of wood, keep the fireplace going. And I did that. I had no problem with that. So I want to ask another question here, and I want you all, I don't need you to answer me, but I want you all to answer this question yourselves. If you are cheating on a high holy day or a Sabbath, is your life full of shalom or full of chaos?
Yes.
And you just, don't have to, that's your outside voice, Kay. I don't need to hear that.
Sorry. I thought I was on mute.
And just keep in mind that we are being recorded here still. So
Oh, yeah.
just, if your life is full of chaos or full of shalom, is your Sabbath, the way you treat the Sabbath or the way you treat the holy days, part of the problem or part of the solution? Is the way you wear your wedding ring or hide your wedding ring part of the problem or part of the solution? And again, please don't misunderstand me. Job also had chaos, and he was one of the most righteous men in the world at that time. But that was a direct testing from Jehovah. So yeah, sometimes chaos is a testing. Sometimes things just happen. Life and what Solomon said, time and chance happens to everyone. So, but I'm looking at myself. What's going on? Why is that happening? And I'm trying to figure it out. And sometimes I don't got an answer. And then I bug James, what's going on? And James wisely doesn't give me an answer. He just listens. So, but again, look at yourselves, look at your situations, look what's going on. You got a barn full of mice and they're eating up all your oats. It's got nothing to do with the Sabbath. Or does it? Your work, your job, you're getting ripped off, people are stealing from you, they're not making any money, inventory is not showing up when it's supposed. All these problems are, well, what are you doing? Is it Sabbath? Did you skip the holy days? Are you keeping the holy days at the right time? Right? So at Sight of Moon, we say, the crescent moon to begin the month, the barley, the green ears of barley to begin the year. And that has set us apart from a lot of groups. So is that part of the problem, part of the solution? Go ahead, Glenn.
I was going to say, it seems to me over my experience, the more I make his will my priority, the more he makes my will his. And it just works. I am so amazed.
Say that
at
again, Glenn. Just say it
the
again.
more I make his will my priority, the more he makes my will his. The more I do the things he wants and I focus on him and I don't sit there and go, oh, woe is me, I need this, I need that. Though I ask for it if I need it, I usually don't ask for it because I'm provided for it even before I ask for it. And that is peace, because I know it's going to be there. Money, food, anything, a furnace that works instead of one that doesn't work. Everything. It's amazing how the more I focus on his priorities, the more my will gets done. And I don't even have to ask for it. It
Now
just
this,
comes.
that only applies for the rest of the year during the 10 days of awe leading up to the Feast of Sukkot. All bets are off at that time. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? We're going to wrap this up. We've been on here for a while. We're going to wrap this up, but they're going to keep the room open so you can all chit chat afterwards. Has anyone else got anything they want to say about what we talked about here today? Okay. Well, if you are watching on Zoom, please subscribe to the button below. If you are getting our are not getting our newsletter, subscribe to that. I sent you the wrong link this week just to see if you guys were awake. Some of you were, some of you weren't. And but you can always go to the homepage of sightofmoon.com to get the latest newsletter. And we're going to be getting more and more into the calendar season. And if you go to the archives, there's all kinds of information there at sightofmoon.com about the calendar or the various issues of the calendar. So if you're new, go and learn. If you're not new, you can still go there and relearn. If you're teaching, you can go there and teach people from there. And with that, we're going to ask Shane if you would mind doing the closing prayer for us.
Sure. Jehovah, our Father, thank you for the music and the blessings offered today. Thank you for making the Sabbath for man and for us all to be guided to honor your Sabbath and to keep it holy. Thank you for your special teaching today, for letting us learn even more about your Shabbat and how we are to keep it. May this coming week be a blessing to everyone, and may we bless you, Jehovah, and may we return here safely next Sabbath. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Shane. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already noticed, here at sightofmoon.com, we do things just a little bit differently. We let women talk. I don't know why I ever thought of that. I didn't. But no, I'm just kidding. We let people discuss. We let questions be asked. There is no sacred cows here. We let everyone talk and share, or if they can't vocally say it, they can chat it in the side, and hopefully somebody will catch it and we'll bring it up in the discussion. We are here to find the truth. We're here to search for answers. And if I say something wrong, somebody's going to jump on me pretty quick. So we just want to share the truth, and we want everyone to participate and to not be afraid to ask. I only jump on Somber's head or Kurt's head if they say something really stupid, and that comes more often than not.
It does happen, Joe, and
Yeah.
I'm first to admit that. James brought up a question, probably should be brought up right now. New moon observance.
Oh, yes.
Sunday evening. So it's Citable Sunday.
This is tomorrow night,
Tomorrow, Sunday, yes.
December the 5th,
December
5th, 2021.
5th. Oh, yeah. Well, I probably messed up what I wrote in Facebook then. December 5th, 1630 CST.
So this room will be open at 7:30 CST time, Central Standard Time.
16, so 4:30 Central Standard Time.
4:30, which does not mean that you go and look at the moon at Central Standard Time. Go and look at the moon tomorrow night at the sunset, wherever you are. and then come and join the group and
Yep, please
say
bring a
hello.
report.
And you can bring a
Seen,
report.
not seen, bring a libation, bring your chair, and bring your toque, because it's gonna be a cool one.
That's if you're out in Saskatchewan. And with
Well,
that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for joining us and welcome to come back here and Midrash with us next week as well. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.